After failing to defeat the outer gods, the gods who constantly denied despair and failure soon hugged reality. Using their last chance for redemption, Kronos' clock movement to rewind the hands of time sending one person back to the past, and Kim Yu-won, a player of the tower, is sent back with the aim to change the outcome. Does he have what it takes to rewrite reality? Will he back his words and defeat the outer gods? Despair filled the air as defeat was evident and glaring, but no one dared to admit it. The gods and heroes of Olympus sat in silence, wishing for the best turn of events. Sun Ogong, still brimming with the strong and resilient spirit, tries to steer up will and courage in the others, but not everyone operates on his frequency as they all lose hope and zeal, waiting on reports from the other group that went into the tower. Unfortunately, no such news came as the presence of Kim Yu-won closes in on the group. He informs them that the group had no survivors and validates the reality that they stood no chance against the Outers, and even if they did, they could not possibly win. Accompanying Kim Yu-won is one of the Outer Gods. Though dead, it still made the group stare in disgust and disdain. They all knew it was time to use their last chance, Kronos' clock movement, which has the ability to send someone to the past at a designated point in time and allow them to still retain the memories they have acquired in the present. The next challenge was who would return to the past, and with little hesitation, they decided Kim Yu-won would be the best option for the journey. Even though Sun Ogong was also a good fit for this, he entered the tower earlier than Kim Yu-won, as he entered dead last among them. So sending Kim Yu-won gave him ample time to correct and acquire any skills needed for a significant change. Hercules, Ogong, and the others bid Kim Yu-won a sarcastic farewell, encouraging him that he would have the hardest journey and goals yet. They gave him tips on what to acquire and look out for before he is sent back to the past to begin the change. He is sent back to the past 9 hours before the commencement of the tower's tutorial. He actualizes in his middle school gym where he was being bullied, as he took a punch to his face which he instinctively withstands. When the next one came, he skillfully dodges it due to battle experience from the future. He then realizes it is a couple of hours before the first tutorial, which was the perfect time for him to get ready as he returned without powers whatsoever, an average Joe. The clock movement, Kronos' creation, sends Kim Yu-won to the Hongdae area on the 31st of December 2019 at 8 PM. The bully from earlier, Kim Young-eun, is still in shock and angst because Kim Yu-won could defend himself and not cower in fear like good old Yu-won would. He meets up with his blockhead friends who had been waiting for him at the diner's table for a while. They ask how well he bullied Yu-won and what he did to hurt him. Young-eun lies about hurting Yu-won so badly that he needed to be in the hospital so he gets the adoration of his friends, and he does, as they praise him for being strong. While in their midst, he thinks about all the things Yu-won was saying about the tutorial being close and sorrow-filled. How these moments were the final ones before mayhem, and it all seemed like scary gibberish to him. They head out of the diner as it was a few hours to the new year when they see Kim Yu-won amid the crowd in the city, walking healthy, contradicting what Young-eun said. They didn't think about it much but got the bright idea to go bully him. When they confront him, Yu-won pays little attention to them, advising them to enjoy their last moments of peace as he prepares for the chaos he knew was coming. As they're about to ambush him, he pulls out knives of all shapes and sizes from the bag he had in his hand, which scared them as they thought he was out for revenge for the supposed beating Young-eun gave him, but that wasn't the case. He was getting ready for the tutorial, and soon enough, it began. The goal to clear was surviving the now arriving horde of zombies for a given amount of time. The clueless public were briefed and handed basic weapons to defend themselves with. Kim Yu-won, who wasn't on his first rodeo and understood the situation completely, wastes no time as he takes out a couple zombies, earning him points as he levels up. Kim Yu-won is on a roll as he continues to level up by killing zombies, while the others including Kim Young-eun were finding it hard to do the same. It takes more than raw human strength to put an end to these creatures, and only Kim Yu-won had that figured out. Kim Young-eun, on the other hand, wonders how Kim Yu-won is able to kill these creatures so easily without breaking a sweat. Kim Yu-won soon remembered that the zombies have one weakness which he learned in the future. It was salt. Before this, Yu-won had successfully taken out 100 zombies within 10 minutes of the tutorial. He earns 3 status points from this feat, while the others struggle with defending against attacks. Using salt, Yu-won successfully spreads the salt in the air, causing the zombies to die in their numbers. Luckily, Yu-won does this at a moment when Kim Young-eun is about to get bitten, saving him from death. With this salt, Yu-won successfully wipes out a total of 1,427 zombies, ending the first tutorial. The second tutorial is about to begin, just as the masses try to understand what they are into and the first that had just passed. The lackeys brief the masses about the second tutorial and points. There will also be a safe zone that protects participants from the dangers the monsters pose, and those who stay in the safe zone will be given 100 points each for every 3 hours they spend inside. The second tutorial is now in play as most people struggle to make it to the safe zone because its capacity is limited. Kim Young-eun and his friends, being cowards, hurried into the safe zone, and Young-eun tries to get close to Yu-won and latch onto him for safety, under the guise of protection as an upperclassman. Kim Yu-won calls him out and asks him to go hide in the safe zone. He didn't need any parasite or extra luggage. With this, Yu-won walks out of the safe zone to go hunt monsters, and the coward hurries after him, but is shut in by the safe zone's barrier. The safe zone's capacity is 2,500 humans, and so could not contain everyone due to the fact that the city was a well-populated one. The aim of the tutorial was to kill monster earthworms, gaining points and leveling up as well. Kim Yoo-won doesn't slack as he keeps cutting up these worms like they were tofu balls or cotton candy, leveling up as he went through. He gets into a frenzy taking them out without count till he discovers a dungeon in the base of the city which looks bigger than usual. A pop-up notification bar appears informing Yoo-won that he has discovered a hidden dungeon and rewards him for this. The reward itself is a number of earthworms in this dungeon. Where others would be scared, Yoo-won just sees chances to level up and gain marbles these worms dropped upon their death, which he would appreciate their use and importance. He levels up 4 times in this dungeon. Meanwhile, on the surface where the safe zone held the masses, there's soon to be chaos as the safe zone's outer layer, the red zone, collapses after a certain time, reducing the capacity to 1,500 humans. Those outside the now smaller safe zone were at risk of death as the capacity soon maxed out. The safe zone continues to shrink, leading a lot of them to panic and the cowards to kill or send a person out to save their skins. So, as the second tutorial continues, the brave face monsters and gain points while the others decide on who to kill to survive. Driven by the need to survive and save one's skin, the thought of killing or endangering someone to secure a spot in the safe zone soon spread through everyone's mind, but very few were so self-centered and cowardly to force the weak out of the zone. Everyone thought of this, but Myung-eun threw all of his non-existent morals and decides to bully a middle-aged man, sending him out of the safe zone, vulnerable to attacks from the monsters. In the dungeon, Kim Yoo-won kills enough earthworms to get him leveled up to level 20, which allows him to unlock Arcane Power. Arcane Power serves as the basis for any magical skill or ability participants or players use or will use. It is the latent magical power of the player, and the level of the arcane power is 18 points, which is higher than those blessed by the tower from the start. Those blessed by the tower are those who were born or grew up in the tower and decide to climb the tower. Those persons are referred to as pure or half-bloods, and their arcane power, if blessed by the tower, started at 12. After checking out his arcane power and increase in stats, he calls out a lackey. He had spotted watching him in the shadows. The lackey, surprised that he got to level 20 in just 2 trials, comes out of the dark and commends his strength. He asks it for the shop. Lackeys are assistants to the administrator of the tower's floor. They help players acquire items and skills from the shop and hand rewards and points as well. They also give briefings for quests in the tutorial phase, reporting to the floor's administrator every strange and normal detail of the tutorial. They aid the integrity of the tutorials and assist floor administrators. The lackey opens the shop, which houses tens and hundreds of skills and items. As Kim Yoo-won goes through the long list of skills and items, he sees an item called Monkey Eyes, the same set of eyes Son Oh-gong had, and asked him to acquire. And this catches Yoo-won's eyes, pun intended. The lackey questions why he would choose that skill, and he replies that it looks catchy, waving off any suspicions. To not stand out too much and seem suspicious, he got a sword that's fueled on arcane power as well, making up for shallow attack power with intense arcane strikes, using a reasonable amount of his points. This, the lackey took time to explain, emphasizing the importance of arcane weapons. The lackey praises his choice and vanishes to return as it watches his every move. He had become an administrator's special target. He didn't worry about this because as long as he didn't break any rules, he was all good. What he worried about is those in control getting clues on the returning. The time travel to the past is tagged the returning and should usually be a secret only the user knows. A perk of Kronos' clock movement as it erases the traces of future existence, while simultaneously sending the user to the past. A cleverly crafted machine by Kronos, one of the gods of Olympus. While still wandering the dungeon, he discovers a room filled with earthworms and one unique one, the mother worm. With less than 30 minutes left on the timer, he faces the mother worm. That is, after cutting all of her children apart and leaving her enraged. A heated but one-sided battle is the only attacks connecting were Yoo-won's. Yoo-won thinks of a way to kill the monster. After a couple of strategic slashes, as he tests out his arcane blade, he's able to land a bilaterally symmetrical strike, opening its head and gut. Yoo-won in less than 30 minutes has defeated the mother worm, causing the timer to stop. With this, the second tutorial comes to an end. The masses are confused by the abrupt stop of the timer as they wonder if they were safe now. Even after Myung-eun had sent the old man out, warning him not to return or he'll take his life, they all feel uneasy about this pause, till the tutorial is announced completed. The lackey then returns as Yoo-won successfully defeats the mother worm to congratulate him on his success and speed, though it wondered how he could do this so quickly being a new participant. Kim Yoo-won, knowing there's supposed to be a reward for achieving such an unbelievable feat, asks the lackey what it is. The lackey, surprised that he knew rewards are to be given, offers 3 options. The first is skipping the next 2 tutorials and heading to the 5th. Yoo-won carefully thought about this and realized that the lackey felt he didn't know how important the next 2 tutorials are, so Yoo-won didn't pick that. The second is points. He would be given points equivalent to the feat he had just accomplished. The last option is connecting directly to Olympus, a scholarship into the tower and from the tower directly. Olympus is an organization in the tower which held most of the power among players, housing purebloods within its ranks. They recruited the best of the best and were somewhat the top dogs of the tower. The lackey affirms that he could get a direct scholarship to Olympus as it had connections with the organization. Hearing this, Yuan knew that lackeys were not to offer such scholarships. The administrator and other lackeys would not agree with this, implying this particular one was shady. He decides to go with the second option, points. Immediately, he is given 10,000 points. Using this, he decides to put a call to the administrator, which leaves the lackey terrified, asking what he plans to do with a shaky, guilty voice. The administrator, getting word of his feats, gracefully accepted his request for the meeting and soon appears, a mighty, hobo-looking but fierce man who laughs while asking why he was summoned and by who. On getting to know Yuan, he applauds him for being able to kill over 1,000 zombies in just the first tutorial, a truly marvelous feat. The administrator questions how Kim Yuan knows of his existence when other humans were barely struggling to understand what they're in. Kim Yuan wades off suspicion by simply pointing out that the first law of the tutorial, stating that rewards and information could only be earned by participants and not by administrator, shows his presence clearly. Yuan introduces himself and informs the administrator he was offered a scholarship to Olympus, revealing the lackey's treachery. Mad at the members of the Olympus using the lackeys to recruit before the tutorials are concluded, rendering it useless, he squashes the lackey with his bare hands to paste. He then thanks Yuan for this and proceeds to leave when Yuan asks him if he doesn't think a reward was due. Grateful for this, he admits that there is a reward and stretches out his hand to give a handshake, as that was how points and rewards were given or transferred. Yuan was given an S-rank skill, a rare kind, Master of Mana, which raises his arcane power from 18 to 26 points. Master of Mana is a rare class skill which allows its user the ability to manifest energy, or rather mana, the basic energy which the tower runs on. The skill allows the actualization and use of this energy for attack purposes. Mana could be used as it is through blast or used to coat weapons and armor, increasing durability and effectiveness. Yuan decides to test this new ability as he takes out more worms he finds before heading to the surface. The masses were still enveloped by chaos when they see his figure approach from outside the safe zone. Before getting to the safe zone, he senses an earthworm attack from underneath the ground. Earthworms sometimes attack under the earth as they burrow holes to hide their presence. He easily takes it out in one blow in the presence of all the people. Yuan says they shouldn't let him disturb their squabble with the coolest expression ever. Kim Young-un sees this and tries to feign being friends with Yuan in a bid to create an impression on the others through him, and at the same time try to stay alive. Yuan tells him off yet again and warns that he should not get in the way. If he did, he'd die and anyone else. The struggle for survival among the masses continues as the strong and unlawful bully the weak into endangering themselves to acquire weapons and food. After witnessing such extremity, Yuan leaves the crowd as the third tutorial commences. The third tutorial commences and the aim is to kill 50 monsters of different varieties. The point was to collect the earlier mentioned marbles which serve as mana essence and to collect 50 of those. This would allow entry into the arena for the next tutorials. Yuan's goal didn't stop at 50 marbles as he aimed to get as much as possible. He uses Mana Blast, checking his limits on its usage. Even though it isn't as good as he wants, it is able to take out monsters, earning him these essence marbles. Meanwhile, some brave individuals hunt for weak monsters, food, and weapons on their own. Their search leads them to an underground convenience store which lit their hopes and smiles. The trio, Han Junho, Kang Sung-chan, and the girl Lim Ju-yeon let their guard down and suddenly Han Junho gets his head bitten off by a monster as they get ambushed. Conquered with nowhere to go, they try to fight their fate when out of the blue, Yuan knocks out one of the monsters attacking Lim Ju-yeon with a can. He takes the monsters out with ease, collecting marbles and in the process, saving their lives. He complains about them waking him up from his sleep while they stare in awe, wondering how strong he is to be able to pull what he just did off. I should add that these three are at level 10, which is relatively easy and a decent level of strength. Yuan, on the other hand, who had been killing and collecting marbles for the past 4 days without sleep, is pissed that he finally got sleep, but is disturbed, even after using the item scentless powder to mask his presence from monsters. He hands a healing bomb to Kang Sung-chan, who had his hand bitten, and they thank him for saving their lives. They explain that they dissociated with their group as the chaos and disorder were getting even more extreme as people began killing others for acquired essence instead of monsters. Kim Yuan then asks them how sure they were he didn't have those same intentions as of now, or later if they stuck with him. Lim Ju-yeon, keen on observing, realizes he doesn't intend to kill them, so she asks what he wants, which led him to give his proposal. He wanted them to accompany and help him collect marbles as they will act as bait, luring monsters to him to defeat. With the danger, they would have a share in the marbles collected and also have a chance to level up as well. The now duo was left with the choice of wandering in this area crawling with monsters or following someone stronger to a hunting ground and gaining marbles from assistance. They then pick the latter and head to Yuan's hunting ground. They both pull in lots of monsters Yuan has little problem finishing off in a few strikes. This includes monster snakes and lizards. In 2 hours, Yuan had successfully collected 50 essence marbles. As Kang Sung-chan runs for his life, Kim Yuan swoops in and annihilates the group of monsters according to the plan. Even with the sequence being pre-planned, Kang Sung-chan is still shocked at the sheer strength and speed of Kim Yuan. They pick up a total of 50 essence from the dead monsters. 50 essence in less than 2 hours? Who wouldn't be shocked by that? Kang Sung-chan is so curious, he's forced to ask Kim Yuan about his level. Yuan refuses to say and also warns him not to disclose his level or stats to anyone. Yuan-shi, Lim Ju-yeon calls out to Yuan. as she races in with a group of monsters in hot pursuit, again according to plan. No rest? Zero worries. Yuan jumps in again to deal with the team of monsters. As expected, he makes light work of them. Lim Ju-yeon and Kang Seung-chan can't believe their luck. They had gathered much more essence than they could believe. With that count, they get up to 50 essence, which is the required threshold for that tutorial. As there's nothing else they need, the small group heads back up. The outside world, as expected, is full of utter chaos. Everyone is hiding their essence to avoid getting killed. Instead of hunting monsters, most people are focusing on hunting the monster hunters and stealing their essence. The area is divided into two broad groups headed by Hyungnim and Kim Young-un. The groups are not attacking each other as they both plan to let the gate open before going in for the kill. All of that changes the moment Kim Young-un unexpectedly approaches the leader of the other group. Young-un's group outnumbers Hyungnim's, so he's quite confident. He demands 700 essence to keep his group from attacking. So greedy. Just as tension is building between the two groups, a familiar face comes in. It's Kim Yoo-won. Kim Yoo-won is as cocky as ever, perhaps even more, as he opens his bag to showcase his capture of 1,000 essence. Everyone is shocked, especially Kim Young-un, who wonders how he did that. However, Young-un remains confident of his group numbers, should a fight break out. Kim Yoo-won announces that he wants to sell his gathered essence for 100 points each. 100 points per essence is quite much. The groups are torn on how to get the much needed essence. Kim Yoo-won draws a circle around him and warns no one to enter the circle without permission. This is to avoid possible chaos from occurring. Anyone who steps into the circle without permission will die, says Kim Yoo-won. While everyone is shocked at the price of the essence, no one attempts to question Kim Yoo-won. No one but Kim Young-un, that is. Young-un attempts to play hero by accusing Yoo-won of slapping them with unreasonable prices when he could decide to give it for free. That would probably sound good coming out from anyone else but Young-un. Yoo-won insists on the price and says they can sell their items and stats to gain points. While Kim Yoo-won looks distracted, two guys try to sneak up on him. This is met by the sharp and swift end of Yoo-won's blade on their heads. He did warn them, didn't he? Once again, Yoo-won announces the condition of his trade, sternly warning them not to cross his line without permission. Young-un accuses him of stealing this essence from other people. Right, he's one to talk. Lim Ju-yeon and Kang Seung-chan, who have been with Yoo-won the whole time, defend Yoo-won and also call out Young-un for hypocrisy, as he killed their friends and forced them into the gate where they met Yoo-won. With his hypocrisy out in the open, Young-un calls on the people to attack Yoo-won and take the essence for themselves. A monster-killing machine against a bunch of people? What a challenge. The challenge is over almost as soon as it begins though, as Yoo-won makes light work of them. Young-un, realizing the sheer strength of Yoo-won, attempts to run away, but he can only try. Yoo-won takes his head off in a swift but powerful swoop. The remaining people are wiser than the others as they quickly start exchanging their items and stats with the lackey for points. They exchange the points with Yoo-won and collect all the essence they need. They do this just in time as the tutorial is almost over. With the essence sold, they can now leave for the gate since they reached the required threshold. But before they leave, Yoo-won drops a bombshell. He sold all of his essence and didn't keep any for himself. Is this man crazy or something? Why would he do that? Lim Ju-yeon and Kang Seung-chan are shocked to say the least. Yoo-won tells them he never intended to leave and advises them to leave before the fourth tutorial starts. After saying their little goodbyes, they leave Yoo-won. The small fish are gone, it's the big boys game now. It's only 1 hour before the fourth tutorial begins, and Yoo-won summons the lackey so he can get items from the shop. After all, he does have a lot of points now. Genius. Kim Yoo-won is a bit surprised when he sees the administrator attending to him. Whatever happened to the lackeys? The administrator says they haven't found a replacement for the previous lackey. Kim Yoo-won purchases a mid-grade personal inventory, an Arctic steel sword, a pyromancy robe, a magic nullification shield, a well-sharpened sword, and 4 ice crystals. With 540 points remaining, he ends his purchase. After seeing his purchases, the administrator realizes he has no intention to leave. Does this guy know how tough it can get? The administrator leaves and almost immediately, the third tutorial comes to an end. The fourth tutorial comes with the appearance of blood-red clouds in the sky. It's scary, but not to Yoo-won as he's experienced it before. He puts on the pyromancy robe and just in time. Everywhere gets hot and everyone else begins to burn to death. The annihilation has begun. Trash-class school demons emerge from the ground and the city descends into chaos. These monsters are not what Kim Yoo-won is there for. Oh, there it is. The Surutra. The Surutra is a low-class but mighty fiery demon, the 176th child of Surtur. In the previous timeline, he was as big as a mountain. Now he's the size of a house. Surutra looks at the world that is about to be doomed, almost like he's excited to be the annihilator. Kim Yoo-won gets his attention by hurling insults spiced with sarcasm. Surutra looks at the strange but bold man. He doesn't recognize him but notices that he has similar eyes to another adversary. This angers Surutra as he wonders how that guy escaped. The trash-class school demons attack the young warrior who is more than ready for them. Every time a school demon is killed, it explodes immediately and the killer has no time to escape. Good thing Kim Yoo-won has the pyromancy robe and magic nullification shield. Surutra is a little impressed by the young warrior but refuses to engage him till he defeats all the school demons, and you would trust Kim Yoo-won to do so. His nullification shield though is damaged by the explosions. Small price to pay, right? Surutra draws out his long fiery sword and advances towards Kim Yoo-won. Finally, a proper battle. Surutra tries to end the battle quickly by swinging his sword at Yuan, who fails to dodge it. The battle is over, or at least Surutra thinks so. The fire from Surutra's sword failed to damage Yuan. He deliberately let the sword hit him because of what he wanted. His monkey eyes evolved into cinder eyes. Cinder eyes are monkey eyes that synchronized with demon fire. It can tell apart good from evil as well as truth from lies, while also providing strong resistance to fire. Yuan, you sneaky genius. Even with his new ability coupled with the pyromancy robe, Surutra is still really hot for Kim Yuan. However, he came prepared for this battle. Finally ready to face the demon head-on, he brings out his Arctic steel sword in ice crystals. Bring it on, Surutra! Surutra is still amused as he doesn't believe Yuan would be able to compete with his fiery body. The grin is wiped off his face when Yuan consumes the ice crystals and neutralizes Surutra's flames of annihilation. The two warriors face off in a more evenly contested battle now. Yuan can neutralize the heat through his ice crystals and predict dangerous attacks through cinder eyes. However, cold is as dangerous as heat. Yuan's body can barely take the icy aura anymore, and that's when he realizes that he needs to end that fight as soon as possible. There's no need to conserve mana anymore, so Yuan brings out the biggest asset in his locker room at the moment, Mana Blast. The fight is heating up, literally, as Yuan's hand is on Surutra during the blast. He takes more ice crystals to negate the effect of the heat, but his body cannot take the cold and is almost falling apart. It's a battle of whoever lasts the most, and no one seems to be giving up. Finally, Yuan sees an opening. With all his might, he strikes Surutra directly on the back of the head. There's no way he would survive this. Thankfully enough, Surutra falls to the ground, dead. I can't believe I actually defeated him. The status window notifies Kim Yuan that he just achieved an inconceivable feat, and it would take a while to calculate his rewards. It's okay, I'm just as surprised. Kim Yuan opens his eyes and gets up. He notices that his burns are still fresh. It must mean he wasn't out for long. Well, defeating such a demon is a huge feat, so a quick nap is probably not such a bad thing. He can still feel cold and his body is still not in great shape. He looks back at the lifeless demon. It doesn't look so glorious without the fire around it. Oh well, he's not here for looks. Demon corpses usually have items in them, and Surutra shouldn't be an exception. He opens up the fallen giant and sees just what he expects, the giant's heart. To absorb this item, he would need a lot of stamina since his physique would immensely change. At the moment, he has anything but stamina. Kim Yuan is still in his thoughts and doesn't hear the administrator call out to him. This guy again? The administrator is surprised that Yuan accomplished the feat all by himself, messing up the balance of the tutorial. Yeah, Yuan, why are you so good? He then gives Yuan his rewards for slaying the demon, 10,000 points and a heaven slaying star. He also tells Yuan that he would be transported to the final tutorial in 4 hours. The heaven slaying star increases all his stats by 3, as it increases stats based on the opponents killed. It has a completion rate which increases based on the value of opponents killed. Even though it's not a complete skill, it is a useful one and Yuan sees it. Before the administrator leaves, Yuan buys a lesser scarlet medicine bowl which helps his wounds and stamina to recover quickly. 4 hours go by in what seems like the blink of an eye. Yuan is transported and wakes up on an island filled with people from different worlds. The final tutorial has begun. The status window announces the task for the final tutorial. Baraganda Island is slowly sinking underwater, and the only way to escape in time is to kill the boss on the island's peak. The contribution of each person will be calculated into scores, and the scores plus the time remaining will determine the final rewards. They have 30 days to complete the tutorial. After hearing the announcement, the people on the island start to bring up different ideas. One of those ideas is to team up. While almost everyone agrees, there's one person who disagrees and chooses to gather his teammates by himself. Kim Yuan recognizes this person. It's Hargon, the self-proclaimed heir of Olympus and descendant of Zeus. He's not just a powerful warrior, he's a pureblood. Pureblood refers to those who are born and raised in the tower and decide to climb it. His power is undeniable, but Yuan isn't interested in him. Yuan is about to walk away, but hears Hargon's voice. Hey you! Who are you? Kim Yuan turns to see Hargon right behind him. Turns out his pyromancy robe is what gave him out, as Hargon instantly recognized it. When he tells Hargon that the robe was gotten with points, Hargon is shocked, to say the least. Hargon asks for his level, but he refuses to say. Still surprised by Yuan, Hargon asks him to join his group. Just like Hargon refused the other group, Yuan refuses him and leaves. How rude. Hargon tries to chase after Yuan but is literally left in the dust. How is he so fast? Could he be pureblood or an elf? Maybe he's from the Hermes bloodline. Meeting Yuan sparks Hargon's curiosity, but he leaves to start his task. A little while later, Kim Yuan is still on the island. He battles with a group of gnolls and they're no match for him. However, even killing tens of gnolls cannot boost his Heaven Slaying Star completion rate, as it is just up to 0.1%. How frustrating. He decides to take a break from killing the small guys and go after the big fish. Maybe that would boost his completion rate. He realizes he's recovered pretty well. Now is as good a time as any to consume the giant's heart he's been keeping. The effect of the giant's heart is very painful, and even though he knows it, it doesn't reduce the pain in any way. He begins to heat up and even the cinder eyes can barely stop it. The item is supposed to be applied and not eaten. He can eat it and survive only with the help of cinder eyes. The pains keep growing till they become unbearable. His strength, stamina, and magic increase, but that's not what he's after. He gains Colossal Fire, but is still not satisfied. He checks the status window and realizes half a day has passed. Maybe he's just not meant to get it. Just as he's about to give up, it kicks in. He obtains Gigantification. Kim Yoo-won passes out. Kim Yoo-won wakes up hours later. He checks the time and notices he's been out for half a day. Fainting twice during the tutorial, is that a new record? He recalls that he has the tutorial to clear. He also remembers that Odin, the greatest magic fighter from the previous timeline, owned the fastest record for clearing the tutorial. He makes up his mind to beat the record, which was a week. He checks the top 5 rankings on a status window. Hargon, Yolche, Paladinte, Lee Sung-yoon, and Elidor make up the top 5. As expected, Hargon is ahead of the others. He remembers 3rd placed Yolche and 5th placed Paladinte, sibling rankers who in the previous timeline participated in the tutorial of 2 or more worlds. He remembers that he hasn't checked his stats after the development. He checks the stats windows and sees lots of developed stats, but notices that his strength and constitution developed too much compared to the others. Balance is key. Before going after the big dogs, he looks for a place to test his new stats. He finds one, an orc tribe. Perfect. He uses Colossal Fire and a well-sharpened sword to annihilate the entire tribe too easily. He's impressed. At this rate, he would surely beat Odin's record. A while later, Hargon is checking out the rankings and sees a strange name in 2nd place, not far from him. Even though he doesn't know the strange man's name, he's convinced that it's Yuan. Looks like he's not so bad after all. Hargon tells his teammates about Yuan and tells them that he wants to recruit him no matter what it takes. It looks like Yuan was gaining points while Hargon was recruiting new teammates. And as it turns out, his teammates are mostly the guys ranked 1 to 5 on the status window when Yuan checked. He still leaves a spot for Yuan, desperate to add him to this fine team. The team is on a search for the boss level. After a while, they finally find a dungeon where the boss level should be. Hargon opens the dungeon with his lightning abilities, but they are surprised when the status window doesn't notify them that the dungeon has been unlocked. Wait a minute, did someone already unlock this dungeon? They check the rankings and are in for a much bigger shock. Kim Yoo-won is now in the 1st place ahead of Hargon. Hargon's reaction is a mixture of excitement and frustration. Since there are 2 paths and only one of them leads to the dungeon, the group decides to split up. The first group is made up of Yolche, Sung-yoon, Elidor, Fail, and Typhoon. These guys take the first path and hours later, after engaging in different battles, get to the boss level gate. As they're about to enter the gate, they start to feel a tremor as the ground begins to rumble. Simultaneously, the ranking system changes and it's more than any of them can imagine. They carefully open the door and you just know who they'd find there. Kim Yoo-won is inside the boss level room and from the looks of it, he already dealt with the monster. This is supposed to be a team job. How did he manage to do it all by himself? Checking his new stats, his Heaven Slaying completion rate is up to 1%. It's better, but not good enough. Seeing the boss dead and defeated, the team checks for companions but finds none. Paladinte arrives there and says she's contacted Hargon, who's surely on his way. While they wait for the group leader, they try to convince Yuan to join their team without success. With the speed of lightning, Hargon rushes in to see the dead boss in Yuan. With his speed, Yuan thinks he's about to be attacked and skillfully sends him flying to the ground. He continues to talk with the teammates, saying his final goal is not to survive, nor become a ranker at the top of the tower. His goal is to break through the tower ceiling and become something stronger. Hargon, who is now there, approaches Yuan, this time with caution, and tries to convince him to join their team. Again, Yuan declines. In his frustration, Hargon proposes a bet that they compete for points. Yuan is free to form a team of any number he wishes, and whichever team gets the most contribution points wins the bet. If his team wins, Yuan would be forced to join his team, and if Yuan wins, he would become a servant to him. Yuan agrees but changes the terms a little. He says Hargon doesn't have to be a servant but must help once when needed. Just once? Sounds simple enough. Hargon agrees to the new terms and is eager to start gaining points, but then Yuan notices something weird and draws their attention to it. The status window shows that time is frozen. Frozen? What does it mean for time to be frozen on the island? And what about the bet made by Yuan and Hargon? Does Yuan plan to do this on his own? Suddenly, the timer stops, leaving everyone in shock and anxiety. Everyone but Yuan, as he knew this would happen and the reason it did. Yuan is the reason the timer paused. Due to advice from Odin, who is the only other and first person to stop the timer of this tutorial, he hunts the King of Parasites immediately after the tutorial begins. In reality, Araganda isn't an island like the participants assumed, or are supposed to assume, and Yuan is the only one aware of this due to his future experience. Baraganda is a mythical beast that has its top like an island, and this island definitely has monsters, which were pests when you look at the bigger picture. Baraganda submerges itself in water as a means to combat the monster's effect and presence. When the king of these monsters, or better put parasites, is killed, it causes the timer of the tutorial to pause for a few days, at least until the administrator or the lackeys do something about it. Odin, being the first to discover this, passed down the knowledge to Kim Yoo-won, giving him an upper hand. While other participants were anxious about the pause and if it gave them more time on the island or if it would rapidly count down to cover the time it was paused, Kim Yoo-won took the days to gain more points and face more monsters till the timer resumed. Kim Yoo-won, on heading to the entrance of the boss room, runs into Hargon and his team of hotshots among many other participants who have now formed groups. They get into a little squabble as Hargon still tries to get Yoo-won on his team when he wins the bet. When other participants sees that Kim Yu-won still doesn't have a team or party, they try to invite him to theirs. This makes Hargon curious as he sends out lighting to his surroundings, scaring the other participants away. Kim Yu-won reaffirms that he still plans to go solo on the mission. The time for the next tutorial arrived, and Yu-won and Hargon enter the boss area side by side. The first boss area, that is. The quest for this tutorial is to clear the floor of monsters and find the boss. On this floor, different monsters that usually attack individually were teamed up and attacked in unison. Soon enough, Yu-won can spot the monster controlling the rest, and using Colossal Flame and his arcane sword, he attacks the monster, killing it in one swift, lethal strike. All those watching looked in awe and watched closely as this is the first time anyone saw Yu-won in action, and Yu-won did not disappoint, as he rapidly takes out the monster, confirming what they were all thinking. This top ranker was truly a beast, the beast they all assumed. Spurred by how strong Yu-won is, Hargon doesn't want to be left behind as he joins the battle, cleaning off monsters alongside Yu-won and his team and other participants. During the process, they spot a weird painting which served as a gate to the boss room. Yu-won could sense this and hurries into the room. A pop-up notification appears informing them that they have entered the third boss room, the boss for this tutorial being the Sealed Chimera. The goal of the tutorial is for all participants to either defeat the Sealed Chimera as one united force, or for one of them to break the sealing crystal. This would allow the person to become the Chimera's master and hunt down the other participants. Hargon's team decides to unite and fight the Chimera as they all knew the strongest in the bunch was their captain, and that would be his wish. The only one who could challenge or is stronger than Hargon is Kim Yu-won. Before Yu-won could move, Hargon stops him with a hand on the shoulder, but Yu-won, still determined, breaks the crystal using mana. The system then validates Kim Yu-won as the Chimera's master. They all think Yu-won intends to betray them after fighting side by side for a while. This is totally off the mark because he never intended to betray them. He had other plans. Yu-won's plan is to use the Chimera to break a wall where he sensed a presence lurking inside. Beforehand, he had been given a special mission for the tutorial, which was to destroy the Chimera creator. Using the Chimera, the whole party break through the wall and walk down the path behind it to a room number 4 of the dungeon. The other participants are confused but follow the path with Yu-won. Getting to the 4th room, they find Chimera creator surprising Hargon and the others. The quest then updates, tagging the creator as a boss, and with the mission, defeat the Chimera creator. The Chimera creator, shocked, commends them on finding the room and recognizes Hargon as a descendant of Zeus, calls him out for having the powers of a half-breed. This remark angers Hargon just as the creator planned. Soon enough, Hargon recognizes the creator as one of the rankers in the tower, Child. He's a dark magician who is banished from the tower because he tore apart certain players to merge them with monsters, creating chimeras. Chimeras are hybrids of 2 different creatures, usually a human and monster or elf and monster. They tend to have advanced and absurd features and abilities, usually strange looking, and their creation unaccepted. It turns out that Child was banished and punished with making monsters for tutorials for the next 1,000 years, hence his bondage in the 4th room of Baraganda. But for now, his powers were a shell of what they used to be. All this is explained by Yu-won to Hargon, calming his anxiety a bit. Child is shocked by how much knowledge Yu-won has of him and asks how he knows so much. Yu-won, knowing he'd recognize the Cinder Eyes, directs his attention to them, making Child angsty. Agitated by being reminded of the monkey's eyes, he sends his minions to attack the group and battle ensues. With Hargon and the others facing and obliterating the chimeras, Yu-won could face his main goal with full concentration, defeating Child. This made things easier for him as he moved towards Child with the bloodlust even the dark magician could sense. Child tries to defend himself by trapping Yu-won in a steel dark casket, the one he used to trap participants he used for chimera production. The casket is unbreakable and highly sensed, but not for Yu-won as he uses Gigantification, a skill he earned from defeating the demon. Gigantification is a rare skill and one owned by one of the greats, the finisher of the 12 labors, the most loved hero of Olympus, the arbiter of justice and defender of the weak, Hercules. It allows the magnification in size of certain or total parts of the body into giant proportions. Although the increase is partial, which means that Yu-won doesn't have enough experience or power to carry out a full body increase, it's sufficient to break through the casket and continue his attack. Child protects himself again by stopping Yu-won with a triple dark casket. The casket's stronger than the previous one, but it still doesn't take much as Yu-won breaks through it yet again. Shocked by the strength that is a constant reminder of Hercules, Child decides to change tactics and leave the defensive for the offensive. He attacks Yu-won with a special dark magic skill, Corrupt Venom Fangs. He easily counters these attacks and remembers Zeus's advice on how necessary it is for him to defeat the Chimera creator. As he continues his charge, Child returns to defense as he stops him with his ace card, the hardest defense in his arsenal, the Ebony Thorn Wall. The name expresses how hard this wall is, and Child believes that it would tear Yu-won's hand if he tried to break through. This wall gave Yu-won a little tough time, but he eventually breaks through and gets a hold of Child. He recalls the advice that if he fails to obtain the Cinder Eyes and Gigantification, he should not engage with Child. If he can acquire one of the two, he should trust his judgment on whether he is strong enough to face the Chimera creator, but if he obtains both of these rare abilities, he must defeat the Chimera creator at all costs. In the future, Kim Yu-won has a conversation with Hercules and Sun Ogong, and he's looking for advice on what to do and acquire before the clock movement. Sun Ogong tells him that there's no other advice, assuring him that if he acquires Cinder Eyes, he can see all he needs to see. He can see everything he needs. This comes in handy during Yuan's combat with Child. Naturally, Child can be considered immortal as he had different parts attached to himself using dark magic. This leaves him semi-invulnerable, but thanks to Cinder Eyes, Yuan can see the marks and regions of attachment, making it easy for him to reap off the body parts, defeating and killing him. After defeating Child, he notices that the improvement in his stats is outstanding as his level increases. And so does his special skill, Heaven Slaying Star, increased by 5%, also giving him additional stats. Yuan meets up with the rest when he discovers no lives were lost, but people were hurt in the process, Yorche in particular. Hargon decides to have a word in private with Yuan, killing him out on why he'd choose to do something so dangerous instead of just defeating the Chimera and clearing the floor. The part they took was a more dangerous one that put lives on the line, and they were both aware of that. Yuan replies, explaining that it is to achieve his personal goal. He also advises Hargon to not mention joining his team anymore, as Yuan plans to go on more dangerous journeys, pursuing strength which might put people on the team in more dangerous situations. So he wouldn't want them to hurt and at the same time hold him back. Hargon is left to marvel at how strong Yuan truly is, and how strong his companion should be to avoid death. Meanwhile, the administrator has been waiting for a while because his attention has been drawn to the tutorial, given that Child, a banished player who isn't in the picture, has been taken out. He's also there to reward Yuan for defeating the boss and freeing Baraganda of its parasites. The main reason though is the system is short-staffed due to the in-house cleaning of treacherous lackeys. The administrator also reluctantly replied to Hargon's greetings, even though Hargon felt so honored to meet him. He rewarded Yuan with a rare item, the Dark Divine Crystal, and gave Hargon and the other suitable rewards. The Dark Divine Crystal is a magic item that is used to grant stealth and invisibility to its user. It's the material used to forge Hades' invincibility helmet. It's also the same material that makes Poseidon's Trident and Zeus' Thunderbolt. It's one of the rare grade materials with so much potential when all three are combined. By the way, currently Kim Yuan still retains his position on the top of the table with a whooping total of 674,888 points. He is also rewarded with a special anonymous egg, the egg of an unknown creature with a high rarity. They both get into the first floor of the tower, the outer area called the Meadow of Beginnings, along with all the other participants. Since they all passed the tutorials, they will now be referred to as players. Guilds of all classes and influence were waiting with members to scout for recruits amongst the crowd. Hargon, familiar with the members of the Olympus Guild, recognizes one of its members, a subordinate of Lord Ares, Sir Agamemnon. Hargon approached him to inquire about his spot as a descendant of Zeus, but Agamemnon indirectly insults him, saying his lineage is uncertain, and smartly resolved the issue that might have existed with an apology. Agamemnon inquires about Yuan from Hargon after gaining word that he cleared the tutorial first. Yuan, who isn't interested in joining guilds, bade Hargon farewell and headed off to the city. But before he left, Hargon warned him to be careful and stay clear of the Jackals, a group of rankers who gave up on climbing the tower and now participate in all evil vices. Coincidentally, on his way to the city, he gets ambushed by a Jackal faction with their leader, Fatayo. I wouldn't call this an ambush as Yuan uses stealth, a skill the Dark Divine Crystal provides to easily attack and conquer the entire group. He then interrogates Fatayo, asking for the name of the king of the Jackals. After much torture, he gets a name, Mu Wun-chun. With this, he heads into the city with two aims, funding this man and refining the crystal. He couldn't think of any other blacksmith capable of such than the one he got to know in his future. After reminiscing about moments he had with the gods in the future at the central region of the first floor, he set out with zeal to achieve both his goals. Kim Yuan, having made it into the tower, gets registered and owns a bulb that helps communicate signals through mana, enabling players to send messages and communicate among other functions. Next, he searches for the blacksmith shop, which he has a hard time remembering directions to. In the midst of finding the place after searching around, he gets mugged by a band of thieves who feign being father and son, begging for points. Yuan has no issues handling this bunch and teaching them a valuable, lasting lesson. After the incident, he finds the place just right around the corner. He gets in and introduces his intentions to the blacksmith, who asks him to choose any shabby sword he sees that suits his eyes. Yuan asks if his name is Volcaro, as to not seem suspicious, but Volcaro gets exactly that, furious and ready to swing his hammer to cause havoc. Volcaro thought he was sent by someone. Yuan cleverly said that he is a new entry, showing his orb as proof, and he informs Volcaro that he cleared the tutorial the highest in just 5 days and 4 hours. After showing him the Dark Divine Crystal and agreeing to Volcaro's condition of secrecy, he leaves the smith's shop to go get breakfast. Here, Hargon joins him at the table, asking for his number so they can communicate. When Yuan asks, Hargon informs him that he'll begin climbing the tower with the team in 5 days, to foster teamwork and cooperation. Yuan secretly admires this dedication. Since Hargon isn't climbing anytime soon, Yuan asks him to help take down the Jackals. After much thought, they agree to start the day after tomorrow. Hargon hurries to leave as he had time to catch up. This is when Yuan decided to call out Agamemnon, who had been sitting in silence, watching the whole time. Seeing that Hargon has left, Agamemnon sits at the table with Yuan, trying to convince him to join the Olympus Guild, seeing as he came first on the tutorials. At the same time he did this, he also sullied Hargon's name and position, trying to make him look measly in Yuan's eyes, called him a mutt even. Yuan didn't let this stand, and he rejected the proposal and insulted the Olympus Guild for being the lowlives that they were. He left Agamemnon at the table disrespectfully. Unable to soothe his rage and wounded ego, he gets pissed and orders the jackals to carry out a quick murder. He requests 100 men to go after and kill Kim Yuan once the period of time and harvest passes. Meanwhile, Yuan and Hargon meet on the agreed date, and after much thought, Hargon comes to the conclusion that what they are about to do is right, and they set out to find the king. They enter a shop and meet a seemingly harmless artist, who tries to run away but is immediately caught, and Mu Wun-chun is then asked for by Yuan. Yuan successfully suppresses him despite the fight and struggle. Hargon doubts he's the guy they're after, but when Yuan exposes his true face and nature under his alias, Chun Namun, he's terrified. When he also learns of the horde connections they have to the Olympus Guild through Agamemnon, he gets furious. Fortunately, Yuan can trick Mu Wun-chun into voiding his agreement to Agamemnon by presenting a better arrangement by name-dropping Hargon's ancestor, Zeus. Mu Wun-chun foolishly accepts this with a smile and gets to gathering the 1,000 jackals in one location, and at the time Yuan gave him. After Yuan uses Hargon to convince Mu Wun-chun into gathering the jackals, Hargon is still in denial as he refuses to believe that the Olympus he grew up in had this vile side to it. Yuan tries to convince him to remove the naive view he has about the tower from his head and see reality. This is when everything began to click. The duo agreed to meet again in 2 days, this time to finish off the jackals for good. 2 days later, Hargon shows up to the already waiting Yuan, and he shows a little hesitation. Soon enough, Hargon steals his resolve and concludes that this filth of a group soiling the Olympus he knew and his mother's pride have to go. They both get ready to meet and bid the jackals goodbye and step in. The king assembles the jackals, and after much crowd chatter, he silences the audience to introduce their new sponsors, Yuan and Hargon. Mu Wun-chun, as a sign of goodwill, hands Yuan the money they have collected and made from raids. Almost immediately, Yuan uses Colossal Flame to set the entire cave, which was covered in gasoline, ablaze. The jackals couldn't smell the gas thanks to the scentless powder, and Yuan's plans played out perfectly. While Hargon finishes off those that tried to escape, Yuan kills the king of the jackals. After the whole incident, Hargon feels guilty as it's his first time killing people, let alone 1,000 humans. Yuan understands his innocence and tries to help him see that even if it was truly dirty methods, he did the right thing by removing the filth of Olympus. Luckily, Hargon has the mental fortitude to get himself together after hearing a few words from Kim Yuan. They share their money gained and part ways. Back at the city, Agamemnon is agitated that the jackals have not turned in their earnings, and he soon finds out their fate as his subordinate delivers the news and takes him to see the massacre. Agamemnon has lost about 384,000 points to Yuan and Hargon. Meanwhile, Yuan plans to use the money and further the refining and use of the Dark Divine Crystal in items. He also thinks about the use of the egg and what it is, and he soon realizes that the egg might be the offspring of a creature he could raise as a companion, that'd be capable of destroying or saving the world. He heads over to Volcaro's to talk about all it would take to fully refine and use the crystal. Volcaro suggests using Mithril along with the crystal for forging an item. Yuan agrees to this and hands him his sword, asking for a new one to be crafted. While back in the city, Agamemnon successfully gained a job from the guild to hunt down Kim Yuan. Agamemnon, eager to channel his anger and ego injury to Yuan's capture and destruction, readies over 200 men with the guild backing him up, to find and most likely end Yuan. Though suspecting that something like the storm incoming from Agamemnon is bound to happen, Yuan doesn't seem moved as he has better goals he would love to accomplish. One of them being raising his special skill, Heaven-Slaying Star, which was increasing at an extremely slow rate, I might add. Heaven-Slaying Star increases its user ability and odds to kill a celestial being, though its requirements are quite tasking. The user must kill as many creatures as possible with as much mana and most likely as high difficulty as well. The skill increases as the nature and number of slain monsters pile up as well. The stronger the creature, the more increments. While increasing the pile, he gets a notification on his orb informing him that Volcaro has completed the refinement, and it was ready to be acquired. This made Yuan excited as he looked forward to seeing what the great Volcaro had accomplished with the Dark Divine Crystal. Meanwhile, Volcaro completes the finishing touches to his current masterpiece, and at the same time appreciates the joy that making such a refinement gives him. Still in the euphoria every blacksmith would get, creating something rare and beautiful, he senses the presence of a large army gathering at his doorstep. He picks up his hammer, wishing they had come another time as this isn't one, but ready and willing to take them on. Right outside the shop stood a faction of the Olympus Guild army and a rare addition. A fellow ranker just like Volcaro, strong and the ruler of fire. The right-hand man of Apollo himself, Chryses. Since Volcaro could take on an entire army without breaking a sweat, a ranker who was banished, forgotten glory for discipline and left his name, Hephaestus, they brought in a ranker to match his insurmountable strength. Though it would incur penalties for rankers to fight and go all out on the first floor of the tower, the two rankers were ready to face each other with all viciousness. Even though Volcaro has little to no problems caused by the penalty, they both have a hard time keeping up with each other, a truly beautiful and enjoyable fight. The battle continues for a short while as banter goes alongside, not until Chryses pulls out his ace, Aegis, the shield that petrifies, made with the head of Medusa herself if you're familiar with Greek mythology. Hephaestus, rather than Volcaro looking at the shield, petrifies him and makes his capture easier. The commander of the faction thanks Chryses and orders his subordinates to capture Volcaro. Aegis could only petrify once a day, and this particular shield is a replica with a reduced effect, giving room for quick undoing. Understanding the urgency, they rush to carry Volcaro's body, but stop as Yuan appears, protecting Volcaro's petrified body. Everyone is curious as to who this mystery guy is, and some soon recognize him as Kim Yuan, the player who cleared first on the tutorials, even above the pureblood descendant of Zeus, Hargon, the newbie who took out the dreaded jackals. Soon enough, the realization and fear that they wouldn't stand a chance against him all gripped them. Even when the commander recognizes him, he overlooks his reputation and asks for his head. Yuan, on the other hand, thought in his head that a squabble like this involving two rankers is sure to draw the attention of the administrator, and so far, they've done a good job on the aspect of going all out. One of the subordinates points out that if they were to harm a new player, there will be penalties as well. The commander furiously slices his head off and announces that he would reward anyone that could kill Yuan with a managerial position. This spurred the men forward, but all they did was rush to their deaths. Yuan begins his attack with colossal fire, and soon enough, Cinder eyes to guide those flames. While fending off the soldiers, Chryses attacks Yuan with a couple of mana blasts, which luckily he dodges. Yuan takes out the entire attack group with ease and soon faces a now interested Chryses. Chryses, wondering what a new player is possibly capable of, sends his massive attack, Sun Shard. Yuan tries to resist its effect with the Pyromancy robe. This makes Chryses curious as he asks how Kim Yuan is related to Hephaestus. After learning that the relationship is merely transactional, Chryses wonders why he would go so far on that relationship basis. He doesn't stop attacking though as he sends Sun Shard again. Yuan tries to control the effect using Gigantification, to cover the spear and Cinder Eyes to deal with the heat, but failed, sustaining a burn effect. Since Chryses cannot sustain sending more than 5 solid attacks, he decides that he can hold out on the next ones till the penalty kicks in. They continue the battle, and Yuan has a hard time combating the Sun Shard, and much sooner receives a second group of mana blasts. The effect starts to show on Chryses as he feels drained. Chryses sends Yuan flying to Volcaro's shop with a massive blast, and luckily he is just beside the refined and now pure Dark Divine Crystal. Remembering what Apollo told him about the penalty and how the tower works, as if it were alive and drains power from players to maintain its sanctity of the tower, back to the pending fight, they all assume Kim Yuan had been killed off as no ordinary player would survive that attack. Chryses, weakened by the penalty, contemplates with the commander whether to capture Kim Yuan or leave his body. Not until Kim Yuan comes out holding the pure Dark Divine Crystal in hand. They all stare in shock, and due to how tired Chryses felt, the army decides to take over from him. They attack Yuan in groups, but Yuan uses stealth, a skill the crystal offers to its user to take them all out and still protect Volcaro's petrified body. The next wave attacks and he uses the crystal's dark magic to drain their life force, making the commander realize how monstrous Yuan truly is. Chryses, seeing this, gets interested as it's rare to see individuals that wield two entirely different mana attributes. Chryses is moved to propose that Yuan joins the Olympus Guild. Yuan refuses as always and the bout continues, alongside talks and brags. When asking his reason for wanting to take Volcaro back so badly, Chryses explains that the Gigantomachy would not happen if Volcaro returns, and he's ready to sacrifice anything to accomplish that. He sends out a massive attack that affects Yuan enough to knock him unconscious. The commander sees this opportunity to finish off Yuan and tries to take it. Fortunately, Volcaro had successfully escaped petrification and is now very pissed at the army. He hits the commander from the back and is triggered enough to want to bash his head in. While the scared commander cries out for help, the administrator out of the blue shows up and stops Volcaro from committing something extreme. He scolds the men from Olympus and tells the commander to report the whole incident to Zeus. He binds the commander with the spell that would cause him to tell Zeus the entire event, and with the truth, word for word. Meanwhile, the unknown egg shows its teeth, uncertain whether to devour or to protect Yuan. After being cared for by Volcaro, he regains consciousness and soon enough realizes his savior. Volcaro then comes clean by saying his real name isn't Volcaro but Hephaestus, the forger, the blacksmith of Olympus. Kim Yuan replies in a sarcastic way that discloses he had known all along. As a way to thank Yuan for defending him, he promises to make him the best sword, but he has to wait for a few days as the sword needs to be prepared for him to climb the tower. Later on, Yuan thinks about how his life is, the Olympus walking on eggshells as they wouldn't want to offend the administrator, implying they won't get in his way for the time being. His relationship with Hephaestus has gotten to where it was in the future. He realizes that the refined crystal in its purest form had 3 key abilities: summon hell, increase dark element mana, and resist attacks of dark element mana. Soon enough, he gets a message from Hephaestus saying come. On getting to his place, Hephaestus has made him a new item, a silky smooth glove, made from mithril that allows its wearer to conduct and control mana easily. It also has a pocket for the crystal. This excites Yuan, but Hephaestus asks him to save the excitement for the sword as it was worth it. Hephaestus yet again has made a flawless weapon. This sword showed and owned its glory. Hephaestus asks Yuan to name the sword, and after consideration of its appearance and attributes, he comes up with the name Midnight Steel. This name doesn't sit well with Hephaestus, as Yuan had a horrible taste in names. Midnight Steel, a black blade with effects and ability specialized for darkness. It accumulates mana as a weapon on its own and has a recovery option beyond expectation, enabling him to fight efficiently in the dark. Hephaestus, even though he's pissed that Yuan uses zero creativity in giving his beauty a stunning name, he asks if Yuan is ready to head up the tower and what he plans to do to the Olympus Guild. After affirming that he would take them down, Yuan is bade farewell with a simple "Go, I won't see you out." Same as always. Yuan reminisces about the future where he needed a sword, and Hephaestus, who ran out of material, melts his sword and using his hands, hammers the sword into perfection while gaining serious injury. He doesn't mind the fact that he had to get hurt to provide a sword. He just wanted to help Yuan succeed. At that moment, Yuan felt he had been given more than just a sword. Hephaestus was giving him his heart. Kim Yuan climbs the tower and first enters the Colosseum for his first exam since he entered the tower 12 days ago. While the exam proctor, Shuri, watches and reviews all she knows about him, as he walks in alone for an exam that other players go for in teams. She didn't care. As long as the Colosseum still stands, the players can fight each other as much and as long as they please. Meanwhile, Yuan gets ready for his next hurdle, the Colosseum, an exam to test your power as the workmanship of a warrior. He gets into the Colosseum and sees the scoreboard with Sun Wukong, the great sage and heaven's equal, sitting on top of the table with the highest score of the 19th round. He also sees Hargon on the board with the benchmark 16th round, which is higher than his limit the first time in the future, the 12th round. The exam begins, and in just one strike, he takes out his first opponent, clearing the first round of the Colosseum. It caused the Heaven-Slaying Star skill to increase by a little margin. This left shock on the proctor, as the Colosseum is a place where no player had seen the end of, a place players who want to become rankers challenge their limits. Yuan uses his new sword to land that hit, leaving Shuri excited as she realizes she might witness a historical moment given that he keeps fighting, clearing 10 rounds without pause or using any real skill. Victory reoccurs up till the 19th round, where he uses Cinder Eyes and Colossal Flame after challenging the 16th round. This round, the 19th, provides a tough opponent which Yuan finds quite hard to take out, but after using partial gigantification, he defeats his opponent. The opponent acknowledges his second defeat, as only Sun Wukong could deal this damage before Yuan. Yuan levels up, passes the 19th round, and adds 1 point in strength, dexterity, and vitality each. The Heaven-Slaying Star also increased by 4.78%. He successfully clears the 19th round and aims to clear the final, the 20th, which no player has managed to pass. A prompt appears asking if he is ready to challenge the 20th floor, demanding an answer in 30 seconds, which provides no chance for rest. He accepts the invite and challenges the final round. Overwhelmed by the bloodlust and killing intent he consents on this round, his challenge for the 20th round has begun. Yuan's opponent, a giant serpent by the name Yamato no Orochi, this beast was the cause of destruction in the legends and had little to no weaknesses, except the reserve scale it had near its only single reverse scale near its heart. It brought disaster and chaos, but Susanoo, a hero in the legend, had a sword that conceals souls, and with this, he left a scar near Orochi's heart, hence the one reverse scale on its body. The battle ensues and Shuri watches from afar as she comments on how foolish it would be for Yuan to lose his life after coming so far. Yuan continues to aim for the scale but only manages to dent the scales while struggling to dodge life-snatching attacks from the giant serpent he is facing. He keeps striking, but they are merely shallow stabs, and soon enough, he realizes that this Orochi is different from the one he knew. Yamato no Orochi is a giant serpent which is just the shell of one of the outer gods, sealed by Susanoo. The goal of this round became clear: defeat Yamato no Orochi's 8th heart, and this goal proved extremely difficult, as Yuan is trying his best just to come out alive. He comes to terms with the situation, but understands that even if the goal is extremely difficult, it wasn't impossible, as the tower would never give an impossible test. He sums up the zeal to find the way no one could, defeat Orochi and be the first to complete the first floor's trials. Yuan remembered one of Sun Wukong's narrations where he explains that he is caught off guard and hit by one of Orochi's tails. This strike would have killed a natural or rather ordinary player, but he barely escaped thanks to his vitality. After a heated and repeated series of strikes to that one weak spot, I think Yuan might do the impossible. Kim Yuan, after a planned series of attacks, finally gets one in, killing Orochi on the spot. His skill, the Heaven-Slaying Star, increases by a whopping 12.85%. The achievement of reaching the end of the trials is carved into the Colosseum, as his name now sits at the top, over the great sage himself. Yuan, who had been leveling up for a while, reaches level 69, just 31 levels away from bagging 100. The rate, he thought, is much faster than hunting. The shocked examiner, Shuri, approaches and congratulates him on clearing the trials. She then proceeds to find out more about this powerful, strange, and secretive player. She asks about his Cinder Eyes, his skills, and how he knew about the reverse scale. Yuan, used to waving off suspicion, had no problems doing so while being secretive. Shuri understands this and hands him one of the rewards, a sword she had been given by the administrator and asked to give whoever clears all the trials. She never thought it would happen, but the day to give it off finally came. On removing it from its sheath, Yuan notices that it's broken, and so does Shuri, but soon enough, Yuan realizes why this is a valuable reward. Susanoo sealed Orochi in that blade, therefore it possesses a lot of power, which can only be accessed when all pieces of the sword are collected. This special sword is called Tosca's Sword. Yuan also receives 20,000 points, all his stats increased by 2, and he gained Orochi's 8th heart. Shuri advises that he doesn't use the egg as it is because it contains strong poison, but Yuan already thought of that and isn't going to. Suddenly, the unknown egg reacts, expressing its hunger. Soon enough, it reveals its appearance, a monstrous looking uncertainty as it seems. This left Shuri shocked and worried as to how such evil could get into the Colosseum, which is heavily protected. The egg begins to devour the corpse of Yamato no Orochi's 8th head. After feasting, it falls asleep and its hatching rate increases. Noticing that Yuan had a lot going on in the shadows and is as secretive as possible about his abilities and powers, she promises to keep all that happened a secret, as well as all the information people would want to know about the top player and how he cleared the final floor. She bade him farewell in a simple, optimistic, and noble way he is familiar with, leaving Yuan happy he met her. On the floors of the tower, rumors spread about his victories whereas Yuan gets to the 9th floor, the labyrinth, and after some time finds the right exit, gaining weight rewards for finishing the floor's challenge. He soon wonders if he should meet a man, who turns out to be Hephaestus. Getting to the shop, he meets Hephaestus and informs him that he came to get what he had left to Hephaestus. Hephaestus informs him it's almost finished and asks how the climbing has been since he took 10 days to clear the labyrinth. Yuan at first refuses to divulge until Hephaestus makes him. The item is finally ready, enabling Yuan to continue his climb as it will play a role soon. The item was a terrible mana conducting knife which has a high mana resistance, made from tar, bale, and obsidian, usually used for armor. Yuan is grateful for this new addition and sends 10,000 Asgardian build points to Hephaestus. After his passing the 9th floor is confirmed, Yuan uses 10 points to summon a portal taking him to the 10th floor, the realm of Murin. After his qualification is vetted, he's teleported to the starting point, Wuhan of Hebei. This realm is a huge continent surrounded by water where the strong shape the community. Trials begin immediately here as the trials to join a martial arts school, learn their art, and pass the school's exam. Yuan is soon met by the Sapphire Sword School, and after the interesting and prideful pitch, Yuan declines to say he's here to join a different team. One of the members, Yang Wanir, takes offense and draws his sword, but the bloodlust emanating from Yuan's eyes scares him off. Onlookers watch and talk about Wanil's humiliation as Yuan journeys off. He spends 10 days moving on foot as the realm of Murin is quite vast. He soon sees Xinjiang's Heavenly Mountain and he heads over there. In the middle of the forest, he can sense about 20 skilled individuals watching the shadows. Yuan announces that he isn't an enemy and asks, showing knowledge. This is the mountain that the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult resides, isn't it? The members come out and surround him. Kwang Hamuk, pure blood of the Heavenly Demon Cult above the 40th floor. Hamuk suggests that he either takes their trial to test his strength as a player or faces the consequences that might follow disagreeing. Yuan accepts the trial and with little briefing he got, even when discouraged that it's an impossible task, enters into the barrier. At first he tried to resist but failed. The rule for this trial is if he strays from the designated path and hits the barrier, he'll enter an abnormal state of hallucination. Before Kwang could completely brief him, he left for the trial and using Cinder Eyes navigates through the forest knowing real and false paths. After successfully navigating the forest, he comes across the living realm of Murim history, a high ranker alive before Murim came into the tower, the Heavenly Demon. The demon asks him when he first knew he is being watched, and when Yuan answers correctly, he sends him back to the forest with a path leading to the living realm. Soon enough, he runs into Kwang, who is shocked that Yuan got there before them. On request, they offer him a place to stay, bath and rest. Even the unknown egg feels comfortable as this is the first time since he entered the land of the Heavenly Demon that Yuan is still for even a second. Kim Yuan, through a series of conversation, gets to know about the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult's trial on the 10th floor. However, they also warn him that this trial is next to impossible. With great risks comes great rewards, doesn't it? Rewind to a few months ago, a few days after Kim Yuan cleared the first Colosseum. Kim Yuan stares at the strange egg and observes that it's grown in size since the last time. The mysterious egg takes the shape of an outer god, but as it consumes Orochi's heart, Kim isn't sure what it is anymore. He asks the egg for its opinion, to which it doesn't respond. But the moment he talks about potentially destroying the egg, it starts to respond through the system, pleading to be saved. Kim Yuan tests the egg by threatening to break it open with his sword. He wonders why the egg doesn't fight back. Is it that it won't attack, or it can't attack? Back to the present time, 10th floor, Kim takes a bath with the egg. The egg is much more receptive to his questions now. Could it be because of their current location? A potential outer god and the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult? Kim Yuan has his hands full. The next day, the Lord of Heavens discuss at the Divine Cult headquarters. Lord Spear, Lord Dao, Lord Fist, and Lord Sword are the lords in attendance. They discuss the exciting challenge they just received, the first in 34 years. Lord Sword demands to know who that Kim Yuan guy is, and the other lords tell him about Kim Yuan's incredible feats. Of course, he doesn't believe them, so they look forward to seeing for themselves. The lords go to the outer part where the meeting is to be held. Every member of the cult bows before them, but at that same moment, Yuan noisily opens the door. The kid looks cocky and confident. Yuan looks around and recognizes these guys. They're the four lords that stand on the divine cult's vortex. The lords call for the second trial for Yuwon to begin since he was the one who passed the first one. But before it begins, Chun Jaryong, the Black Tempest Squad vice leader, asks for a chance to test Yuwon's fighting skills first. It's an incredible offer that's too juicy for the lords to refuse, so they permit the battle to begin. It's not the cult's official second trial, but as there can be no trial without rewards, Lord Sword proposes to give the winner the Crimson Blood Pill, one of the divine cult's high-value medicines. Yuwon isn't one to back down from a challenge. He draws his sword and accepts the challenge. The mission is simple: defeat Chun Jaryong and receive his acknowledgement. Kim Yuwon knows his strength, but from the looks of the audience, Chun is not just some pushover. Yuwon also notices that the penalty is adjusted to that of the 30th floor. If it's this serious, how difficult would the actual test be? The four lords are also watching, so Yuwon believes the heavenly demon gave them an order considering the one who passed the first trial. Chun draws Yuwon's attention back to the battle with trash talk, but he just seems bitter that the lords acknowledged Yuwon instead of him, despite all his hard work. Yuwon points this out and it hits the right nerve. Chun charges at Yuwon with all his might. Yuwon just continues to dodge Chun's attack so easily. Chun bemoans about how he sacrificed everything for the cult, climbing the tower and mastering martial arts amongst other things. After all of that, why was a mere outsider recognized ahead of him? Yuwon finally draws his sword from his belt and directly blocks Chun's attack. Then he uses partial gigantification on his arm. With this power, he punches the bitter warrior to the ground in a swift move. The battle is over. It was never really a challenge. The lords are impressed. Yuwon did all these but barely touched his sword. He obtains the Crimson Pill, which he doesn't see as much but accepts a low reward because he put in little work. The lords insist that there are others on the 10th floor who would give anything to get this elixir. Lord Sword is particularly curious and questions whether Yuwon had previous knowledge of martial arts, to which Yuwon replies that he was simply imitating. For Yuwon's next test, Peng Baek-lim, the first lord, steps up. Yuwon's next test will involve enduring 3 techniques from the divine cult's Fist Lord. Yuwon learns that the test will be in 3 months. During those 3 months of waiting, he would have access to everything except elixirs and high-rank martial arts. He would also have access to grain balls, a food that prevents hunger, puts his body in peak condition, and prevents excessive loss of weight during training. Kim Yuwon can tell that the Fist Lord is the weakest of all the lords, but the power behind each of his attacks rivals the others. Maybe they don't intend for him to pass the test, but since it's only 3 techniques, Yuwon believes that it can't be that bad. He shocks everyone by calling for the test to begin right away. The lords remind Yuwon that he's potentially facing a ranker, and asking for an immediate match is disrespectful. As he'd rather not cause a scene, Yuwon apologizes and agrees to the fixed time. His cockiness draws a lot of attention, as he's the new center of gossip among members of the entire cult. Shin Mugwek, the Sword Lord and second-in-command to the Heavenly Demon, personally guides Yuwon out. The Sword Lord assures Yuwon that it's for personal enjoyment and not the demon's order. He says that he wants Yuwon to pass the trial, but it doesn't sound like they're pure intentions. They get to the medical house and the Sword Lord questions why Yuwon chose this place ahead of the martial arts library or weapons warehouse. Yuwon points out that it's part of the things he was given access to and he's just taking advantage of it. As for the other places, he would check them out in due time. In the medicine room, Kim Yuwon requests drugs that might just be enough to heal an entire nation. The cult's chief doctor, Jin Ir-hwan, reminds him that any medical ingredients remaining after 3 months must be returned, and all damages would be reimbursed from Yuwon's pocket. The young warrior is well aware and leaves with what looks like a lifetime supply of drugs. Later that day, he gets to the cult's training chamber. It's a chamber that can only be opened from the inside, and no one can get in unless they break it open. It's perfect for what he has in mind. Once he's alone inside, he starts to consume all the drugs that he got, and the system keeps notifying him of his increasing resistance to poison. Once he's consumed a fair amount, he brings out Orochi's 8th heart. The heart contains a powerful poison, so he needed those drugs to neutralize the poison. Luckily, he came to the right place for the drugs. The egg starts to disturb again like it wants the heart, but Yuwon threatens it until it goes back to sleep. The poison starts acting on his body and the drugs counteract it by trying to contain it. His arcane power drastically increases until he obtains the skill, Master of Mana. With this new skill, he can absorb all the mana in Orochi's heart. A month passes and Yuwon is yet to come out. He didn't even try to learn about a secret technique or two. Kwang Hamuk and his companion almost think he's dead, but as they're about to check, the training chamber opens and he comes out. Immediately, he goes to eat something for the first time in a month. He confirms that he didn't eat anything but the drugs in there, and Kwang suddenly realizes that the drugs could be an antidote for a poison. Soon enough, Yuwon finishes his food and asks to see the martial arts library. The guide shows him around the library but forbids him from going beyond a certain door. The guide leaves him to read and he quickly starts to search for books. He has just 1 month to find a way to endure the Fist Lord's technique, the Heavenly Demon Spirit. Another month has passed since Yuwon entered the library. The guide explains Yuwon's activities to the Sword Lord. The guide says that Yuan already confirmed that he's finished with his research in less than a month. Just one of the weird things Yuan's done since he came in. This makes the Sword Lord even more interested in Yuan. Another month passes and Yuan spends it in the training cave. The D-Day is here, and all the people are gathered in the gymnasium. Yuan is strong, but everyone expects the Fist Lord to make light work of him. Peng Baek-lim arrives first, while Yuan arrives a while later. He looks unafraid and cocky. The Fist Lord's first move is Heavenly Thunder. He unleashes the move, and Yuan must either dodge or block it. Yuan barely dodges it and Lord Peng smirks. He made the right choice, as blocking it would have killed him. Lord Peng increases the speed of the second move, 100-step Thunder Fist, but Yuan uses his Cinder Eyes to anticipate the move and evade it. Lord Peng can tell that Yuan is using Cinder Eyes, but he also has something up his sleeve. For his final move, he uses a move that would affect everyone in the gymnasium, Heaven-Splitting Thunder. The move is so powerful that the other lords have to create a barrier to protect the others. Lord Peng sends the thunder and blasts the arena, but after the dust clears, Yuan still stands. Lord Peng is intrigued and asks Yuan if he wants to keep playing. Yuan agrees to continue as he relishes the challenge of facing a ranker. Yuan releases the efforts of his 3-month research and training, an incomplete heavenly demon spirit. The lords are now more shocked than impressed. Just how far can this man go? Yuan draws his sword first and attacks Lord Peng. The two warriors engage in an entertaining battle where none seems to have the upper hand. Yuan easily blocks every attack from Lord Peng until his demon spirit starts to weaken. Yuan knows that he's getting weaker and must end the fight soon enough, so he uses Mana Blast, which Lord Peng dodges. They keep on going at each other until the duration of the heavenly demon spirit is almost over. If Yuan doesn't act quickly, he will lose the fight. He believes that he just needs an opening to restrict Lord Peng's movements. So Kim Yuan uses his gigantification skill on his right arm, just as he's about to get to Lord Peng. The Fist Lord doesn't see it in time and can't dodge the attack. Kim Yuan blocks Lord Peng's attack with his gigantic right arm. Lord Peng's movement is restricted, and Yuan still has his left arm free. He draws his sword with his left arm and slices the Fist Lord. The spectators are stunned that a mere player could make a Lord of the Vortex bleed. They half expect the Fist Lord to get serious and blow Yuan out of the water. Instead, Lord Peng admits defeat. Even though he knows he'd win if they fought on, he acknowledges the strength of Kim Yuan. After all, it's a trial that he passed, not a battle. The spectators, the lords, and even the heavenly demon watching from a distance are in awe of the warrior. The system notifies Kim Yuan about his victory, and then says that he has gained a new skill, the Heavenly Demon Spirit. The Heavenly Demon Spirit is an A-rank martial arts skill that possesses dominion over lower-class martial arts. A while later, the Lords of the Vortex discuss the battle that just happened. They are also surprised that Yuan gained the new skill within 3 months. Clearly, the kid is talented and Lord Peng mustn't feel ashamed. But Lord Peng isn't slightly ashamed. He's glad that he could spar with Yuan, and then suggests that Yuan could become a ranker someday. Perhaps he could be their leader. The different lords aren't too pleased, but point out that Yuan's final trial from the master is yet to come. Meanwhile, Yuan is resting in his chambers. He knows that he would have eventually lost if the battle continued, and now it'd take 2 days to heal completely. He wants to take his time to analyze his new skills, but he's interrupted by a summoning from the heavenly demon. The guide leads him to the master's hall and leaves him to enter alone. The place is completely dark, and Kim Yuan can't sense the presence of high rankers yet. Egg calls his attention to the master, the heavenly demon, Chun Mujin. Chun Mujin starts by asking about his arm, which is yet to heal. He also stares at Yuan's sword. He can tell that the sword is a masterpiece from Hephaestus. After their little chit-chat, Chun wants to begin the final trial immediately. He says that Yuan doesn't need an arm to pass this trial. As he has no choice, he follows Lord Chun to the heavenly cave. But he meets a barrier which his Cinder Eyes cannot resist. Lord Chun has to personally help him into the cave. The system notifies him that the final trial has begun. The atmosphere of the heavenly cave is rougher than Kim Yuan is used to, but Lord Chun leads him through. After confirming that Yuan received the heavenly demon spirit skill, he entrusts himself to Yuan's care, whatever that means. They get to the place and the egg starts to bare its teeth. Even Yuan's gigantification skill trembles in front of the divine flame. Yuan feels the power of an outer in the flames. Lord Chun explains the origin of the flames to Yuan, and how the divine cult exists to protect the flame and find its owner. All the past heavenly demons have lived by the prophecy, and Lord Chun intends to do the same. He further explains that the trials are just a cover for protecting the divine flame. After some time, stronger powers appeared in the tower, and he could do anything as he had to protect the flame. Because of this, anyone who wished to join the cult must pass the trials. Only the Sword Lord Shin Muguk had come this far, but the Sword Lord gave up and couldn't pass the test. For the last trial, Yuan must endure the divine flames until he receives its acknowledgement. Yuan steps into the fire, aware of how powerless he is when compared to the flames. The fire grows by consuming fear, so Yuan must control his emotions. Egg wants to help consume the fire, but Yuwon asks to do this by himself. He remembers his battles with the Outers in the previous world, and then uses the memory as sufficient motivation to endure the flames. This goes on for a while until the flames finally acknowledge him. He passes the test and obtains the nickname, Heavenly Demon Divine Cult's Vice Lord. He also obtains 100,000 points and his stats increase. Even better, he obtains the Divine Flames as a skill and is now granted access to the 11th floor. Lord Chun watches from outside as Yuwon comes out unhurt with the power of the flames. Could this be the prophecy? Divine Flame is a fire that doesn't fade. It creates huge flames without mana consumption, and it doesn't harm those whom you don't wish it to hurt. Lord Chun requests to see Kim Yuwon the next morning. He shares a cup of tea with the warrior as they discuss the previous night. Yuwon asks if Lord Chun would be leaving now that his job is done, but for the Lord, old habits die hard. As for the nickname he received, Lord Chun encourages Yuwon to accept it. After all, he has the Heavenly Demon Spirit and Divine Flame. What more does he require? Yuwon tells the Heavenly Demon that even if he manages to become a ranker, he doesn't plan on joining the Divine Cult. Luckily, the Heavenly Demon isn't insistent on that and gives Yuwon a free hand. Yuwon leaves and says he would come back around the time the Murin Great War begins. As Yuwon leaves, Lord Chun ponders whether he no longer has any usefulness. But then he remembers something the cult previously wished for before the Divine Flame appeared. It looks like they must return to Murim. Meanwhile, on the 11th floor in Taklan, a player, Halaman, checks out the list of group placements by the system. He isn't comfortable with the members of his group. When he checks the Team B list, he sees popular names that he would rather be with. The only popular name on the Team A list is Kim Yuwon. Even at that, there's no way Kim Yuwon alone would make their team better than Team B. The scales don't seem balanced at all. Meanwhile, Kim Yuwon walks into an inn and requests an accommodation. He can afford the best accommodation as they exchange points for various things. Yuwon also exchanges his Asgard slips for points, so he has enough points to summon a lackey from the system. Yuwon requests for adamantium, a material that would help complete his Dark Divine Crystal. The lackey tries to rip him off, but in the end, he bargains well and gets it for even lower than what it's usually sold for. The lackey requests for 1.5 million points, but Kim Yuwon won't be ripped off so easily. He eventually buys 1.7 kilograms of adamantium for 850,000 points. Yuwon decides to give the material to Hephaestus so he can help him with the Dark Divine Crystal. The 11th floor judge is a ranker named Hypnos, descended from Olympus. Yuwon isn't sure how the trial will go, so he might need the crystal for the trial. There's a week left until the trial, so Yuwon decides that he has some time to kill. In Team A, there's a pure-blooded player, a direct descendant from the Namgung clan. His father is an executive of the mid-sized Murim Guild. He's a leader that attracts talent, skills, and the support of others. Nicknamed the Genius Player, his name is Namgung Hun. On the 11th floor in the Labyrinth of Agrea, Namgung Hun and his companions easily clear the floor. With Hun on their side, they are confident. It looks like they're the earliest to clear the floor. Namgung Hun insists that they finish up quickly to prepare for the trial, but his companions believe that there's no challenge in Team A to prepare for. Well, except for that Kim Yuwon guy. Hun stops his companions from talking about it, but secretly wishes for an opportunity to face Yuwon during the trial. The companions enter what should be the dungeon boss area. Shockingly, they find the boss's corpse hanging from the ceiling. From the cut on the monster, they can tell that the monster was defeated with a single attack. Could this have been a ranker? Whoever it was, this person beat them to defeat Agrea the spider. Meanwhile, Kim Yuwon receives his reward for defeating Agrea. It's a flexible spider thread that's stronger than steel. He decides to keep it for later. During his little walk, he tests his Divine Flame on the monsters. Its completion rate is still low, but it's surely an invaluable skill to have. His Heaven Slaying Star skill is also up to 91.67%. His stats are increasing faster than even he expected. Kim Yuwon goes back to his lodge and he meets a group of people gathered outside his door. The group, led by Halaman, introduces themselves and requests Yuwon to join Team A. He is their only hope after all. Yuwon isn't in the mood to entertain visitors. He rudely refuses their offer and asks them to leave. If he's the reason they didn't forfeit like the rest of their teammates, they might as well forfeit now. He leaves the remaining members of Team A with their pride hurt. It's days until the trial now. Who else is looking forward to a meeting between Namgung Hun and Kim Yuwon? And will Yuwon continue to reject the advances of his Team A members? On the 11th floor, Hypnos the trial examiner is seen sitting in his manor as he reviews the participant list. He observes that Team A has a mere 51 members out of the total 251, while Team B boasts a staggering 200 members. Unfortunately for Kim Yuwon, he is a part of the outnumbered Team A, and to add to his troubles, there's a bounty on his head. Just as Hypnos is about to leave his manor, he receives an unexpected message from none other than Hera, the wife of the King of Olympus. Meanwhile, Yuwon is at the trial location staring at the big screen, where the team lists are displayed. Team A members begin to panic because they are outnumbered by Team B. Many Team A members have forfeited out of fear of being killed.
Hypnos appears on the scene, acknowledging Team A's unfair handicap, but alas, the game must go on with no changes. He explains the rules of the trial. Capture the flag style. There are various flags scattered in unknown locations, and the team with the most flags at the end wins. They can steal flags from the other team by any means necessary. One member of each team will be randomly chosen as a king, and the number of flags that the king holds count as double. However, the game isn't over even if the king dies. The game begins, and guess who's chosen as Team A's king? The weakest player in the team, Halamon. Yuwon is understandably frustrated and confronts him, asking why he's even here after warning him to give up on coming to the 11th floor. Yuwon later strikes a deal. He'll protect Halamon if he stays calm. Yuwon then heads off to search for flags. Meanwhile, Roll, the angel, appears to Nam Gung-hoon and thanks him for recognizing her. They're on the same team, and she asks him who he thinks their king is. Nam Gung-hoon recalls a guy on their team who was glowing with light, but he can't remember his face. Some Team A members, including Halamon, regroup and discuss their strategy for winning. They're happy to have Yuwon on their team and believe they can win if he targets Team B's king. But as they're discussing, some Team B members infiltrate their hideout, and a fight ensues. Unfortunately, one of them is quickly taken down without much effort. Uh-oh. Halamon watches in horror as his team members are being slaughtered left and right. He tries to run away but is caught by Kale from Team B. Feeling scared, Halamon surrenders, but Kale is still determined to end him. Luckily, Yuwon appears like a hero and takes down Kale with ease, just as he promises to protect Halamon. Hooray! Yuwon scolds Halamon for not staying put like he was told, but Halamon is too busy being overjoyed and grateful to care. The rest of Team B is shocked to see their strong member, Kale, taken down so easily, and realizes that Yuwon is the real deal. One brave member tries to fight back, but Yuwon defeats him quickly. The rest surrender and beg for their lives. Yuwon spares their lives and takes their flags, but he notices that there are only 64 flags instead of 67. He suspects that some of the flags have been stolen. Yuwon instructs Halamon to stick close to him because as the king, he will be a prime target. The defeated members of Team B inform their leader Nam Gung-hoon about Yuwon's strength, and he orders his team to hunt down Yuwon and Halamon. Yuwon continues to collect flags, but he doesn't give them to Halamon to hold on to because he fears the game will end if Halamon dies. Halamon wonders why Team B gives up their flags so easily, and Yuwon suspects they are planning something. His suspicion is confirmed when an arrow is shot at Halamon. Kim Yuwon realizes that Team B is trying to capture them both with an inescapable spider net. But will they succeed? Only time will tell. The heaven-woven spider net, a net that is woven from the heaven and the earth, and is escape-proof. In the final seconds, Yuwon and Halamon successfully evade being ensnared in the net. Yuwon regrets not killing all the members of Team B that he has encountered. When Halamon sees Yuwon turn and raise his sword against him, he recoils and covers his face to the ground in terror, anticipating a fatal blow. However, Yuwon draws a circle with the sword instead, warning Halamon not to step outside it, if he wants to survive. Halamon tries to protest because staying still in the circle means he will get attacked, but Yuwon assures him that he won't die if he stays in the circle, but rather he will die if he leaves the circle. The members of Team B notice that Yuwon has left his king and is venturing deeper into the forest. Var, one of the most skilled members of Team B, stands up and declares his intent to kill Kim Yuwon. He reveals his spear and hurls it into the woods, hoping it will strike and kill him. Unfortunately, Var's plan is ruined when his spear abruptly stops in midair. Suddenly, his spear boomerangs, strikes, and kills a member of his team. Var turns around and is horrified to see his other teammates incapacitated and suffocating to death, while Yuwon is standing beside them. Yuwon orders Var to give up Nam Gung-hoon's location. Some members of Team B try to locate Yuwon by using the skill 1,000 Miles Wide Eye, which allows them to survey an area of 1,000 miles from above. However, they are having difficulty tracking Yuwon's movements. They are then surprised by Yuwon's unexpected appearance behind them and wonder how he was able to sneak up on them. Yuwon commends them for their use of the 1,000 Miles Wide Eye technique, but criticizes them for having too few men. Out of nowhere, other members of Team B, including Nam Gung-hoon and the Angel Roll, suddenly appear. Nam Gung-hoon suggests that Yuwon should forfeit the trials due to the unfavorable circumstances against him. However, Yuwon rejects Nam Gung-hoon's offer. Nam Gung-hoon realizes that Yuwon is determined to continue with the trial and decides to challenge him alone. However, Yuwon is confident and welcomes the challenge even if the entire team fights him at once. During the fight, Nam Gung-hoon is surprised that Yuwon, who is only an 11th floor player, can keep up with the Namgung family's Emperor sword form. Namgung's family sword possesses a power that can weigh down all its four sides by just grabbing it. Their sword is heavier than any other. Worse still, Nam Gung-hoon begins to tire while Kim Yuwon remains unfazed. Suddenly, Roll steps in and unexpectedly gives Nam Gung-hoon a buff, which he is not happy about. She informs Nam Gung-hoon that if he can't beat Kim Yuwon even with the buff, it means the fight is over. She also warns him that Kim Yuwon intends to end the fight quickly. Nam Gung-hoon tries to ask her what she means, but he turns around only to see ominous purple flames emanating from Kim Yu-won. Namgungun is surprised when he discovers that the purple flame coming from Kim Yu-won is the Agrea dungeon's fire, which indicates that Kim Yu-won is the swordsman who had slain the Agrea monster earlier. Namgungun then realizes that Kim Yu-won had been holding back during their fight. Roll notices Namgungun has lost his desire to fight and chooses to use her skill, sound telepathy, to listen to their conversations. She is shocked when Namgungun suggests they stop fighting Kim Yu-won since he knows they will all die if they don't. Roll and her team join the fight. However, Kim Yu-won nullifies their attacks by using the Divine Flame's ability to feed on the fears of his opponent. As the fight goes on, Roll's team members continue to get overwhelmed by their fears and are defeated. Even with Roll's buffs, the Divine Flames continue to affect her team members. She chooses to use her powerful attack skill, the Sword of Execution, which is a giant sword that emits radiant light from the sky to defeat her opponents. However, Kim Yu-won easily destroys the giant sword with a single slash of his own, leaving everyone astonished. At that moment, Roll finally realizes that Namgungun was right to retreat. Roll throws in the towel and uses her sound telepathy skill to order her team to retreat. But Kim Yu-won has one more demand for them: hand over their flags or face the consequences. After handing their flags over to Yu-won, Roll tries to recruit him into one of the major guilds called Zion, but he flatly refuses her advances twice by saying he wants to get through to the top of the tower alone. Halaman is alone in the dark and becomes frightened, wondering when Kim Yu-won will return. Suddenly, a fireball is thrown at him, but he manages to dodge it with his quick reflexes. The other members of Team B, who are unaware that their leaders have surrendered to Kim Yu-won, plan a surprise attack on Halaman and question why he isn't running away. Halaman remembers Yu-won's warning and decides to stay inside the circle no matter what happens. One member of Team B enters the circle and attacks him with multiple kicks. But as he is about to be stabbed, a white smoky silhouette in the form of a ghost suddenly appears and blasts the attacker away. Halaman is bewildered by what just happened, but he is relieved that he is still alive. After Roll and the rest of Team B leaves, Kim Yu-won is glad their conversation is over, but is irritated that it took so long. With nobody around, he tells the king of Team B to come out of hiding. The king of Team B is impressed that Yu-won spotted him in the dark and asks how his flames can burn so fiercely without producing any smoke. Yu-won quickly identifies the king behind the mask and questions why an examiner is participating in a trial. The king is surprised that Yu-won recognizes him and ponders if it's a powerful skill to see past an illusion cast even by a high-ranked individual. The king reveals himself to be Hypnos, the examiner on the 11th floor. Hypnos is curious as to why Kim Yu-won is able to resist his mana despite having released a significant amount of his own. He wonders if Kim Yu-won is surviving solely through sheer willpower. Hypnos reminisces about receiving a message from Hera instructing him to kill Yu-won at all costs. Hypnos suddenly uses his Dark Knight skill. Dark Knight puts all living things in its space into hallucination and forcefully puts his opponents in a dream. Yu-won seems to be falling under Hypnos' skill, but as he is about to be attacked, he opens his eyes and slashes Hypnos with his sword, revealing that he wasn't affected by the skill at all. Hypnos retreats a few steps back and tells he will still defeat him no matter what, but to his surprise, Yu-won's stats suddenly shoot up due to the effect of Dark Knight, leaving Hypnos feeling dismayed. It appears that Kim Yu-won's sudden stat boost is due to his sword Edge of Nightfall. This sword amplifies the user's mana when they come into contact with dark attribute mana, and it synergizes with the mana received from the opponent to boost the user's stats. Yu-won acknowledges that he wounded Hypnos, but he still needs to be cautious since Hypnos is a ranker. They engage in a sword fight, displaying their different swordsmanship abilities. Yu-won uses his purple flames against Hypnos, and even though Hypnos feels the heat, he realizes that the flames are not actually hot. Instead, they respond to his fears and give the impression of heat. Hypnos admits that this is a difficult skill to contend with. Hypnos manages to control his emotions and withstand Yu-won's flames. They continue their sword fight, with both displaying their skills. Hypnos acknowledges Yu-won's talent and believes that if he doesn't defeat him now, he may become a future ranker and become a problem to him. Hypnos uses his skill, Moondream, against Yu-won. When Yu-won asks if Hypnos isn't afraid of the other administrator, Hypnos responds that he is only loyal to Olympus. Hypnos scolds Yu-won for not comprehending the importance of a greater cause, but he asserts that he has his own cause to pursue. This remark infuriates Hypnos. However, before Hypnos can react, Yu-won stabs him from behind. Hypnos is baffled by how Yu-won was able to counter the illusion from his skill, the Moondream, a skill that changes fear into reality. He tries to use another skill on Yu-won, but Yu-won tells him the fight is already over. Suddenly, the administrator appears behind Hypnos and he falls to his knees, begging for forgiveness. The administrator asks who among the Olympians ordered him to participate in the trial, but Hypnos claims that he had acted on his own. The administrator sees through Hypnos' attempt to take the blame and decides to hold Olympus responsible for the situation, despite Hypnos' denial of their involvement. Additionally, the administrator removes Hypnos' trial inspector title and punishes him further by placing him in a state between life and death for thousands of years. Hypnos tries to object, but to no avail. The administrator promises to reward Kim Yuan after the trial ends for bringing Hypnos to him. However, when he notices Nam Kung-hoon and others watching from a nearby bush, he abruptly ends the conversation. After the administrator leaves, Nam Kung-hoon expresses his disappointment at Olympus for their involvement in the trials. Nam Kung-hoon then asks Kim Yuan what he plans to do now that he has made an enemy of Olympus. Kim Yuan reveals that he has plans to kill Zeus, the king of Olympus. But can he do so? Yuan tells Nam Kung-hoon that Olympus has been pursuing him ever since he assisted Hephaestus in creating a weapon that Olympus did not approve of. Nam Kung-hoon is surprised to hear that Yuan is at the center of such a significant issue, as he had heard about the recent events in the tower from the Namgung family. Nam Kung-hoon advises Yuan to be cautious before taking his leave. As Nam Kung-hoon departs, he receives a message that the Murim Grand competition is about to commence. Yuan returns to Halaman, who is relieved to see him. He praises Halaman for being strong and staying firm during the trial, which causes Halaman to become emotional. He gives Halaman the flag, and being the king, the flag count is multiplied by 2. Their team now has a total of 1,236 flags, while Team B has only 2 flags. A few moments later, the time for the trial expires, making Team A the winner. Yuan advances to the 12th floor with 10,000 more points than expected. He assumes this is a reward from the administrator. Kim also checks the rankings of the other competitors and sees that Hargon is now in 6th place. He becomes curious about Hargon's strength and looks forward to meeting him soon. Nam Kung-hoon goes to the Namgung family's residence and informs Namgung Jinwon, the head of the family, about everything that happened during the 11th floor trial. Namgung Jinwon admits that the year's Murim Grand competition would definitely be an exciting one. Currently, Yuan is participating in a trial on the 19th floor, where he sets a new record by destroying 1,000 targets with a spear throw. He feels proud of himself for creating a spear using the Divine Flame. Yuan decides to pause his progress on the floor for a bit and focus on increasing his stats, as he wants to achieve a certain goal on the 20th floor. Yuan intends to increase his magic power to 100, and the sole way to accomplish this is by winning the Greater Scarlet Medicine Ball, an elixir that is created every 3 years and is only available to the Murim Grand competition. With the competition just a few days away, he decides to travel to the venue. The day before the competition, individuals are overheard discussing and placing bets on the outcome of the competition, particularly on how many guilds would attempt to recruit Yuan during the event. Meanwhile, various guilds, including Zion, are already trying to recruit him, but he declines their offers and tells them to leave. Hargon sees Yuan after a long time, and Yuan invites him to his apartment, leaving the others disappointed as he shuts the door on them. Hargon compliments Yuan on his luxurious apartment, mentioning that it must have been expensive to acquire. As they continue to chat, Hargon inquires why Yuan has made an enemy of Olympus. Yuan questions if Zeus knows about this, but Hargon informs him that Zeus is preoccupied with the 100th floor, which no one has ever completed. Yuan ponders how the rankers will react when they discover the existence of a floor beyond the 100th floor, known as the ceiling. Kim Yuan later decides to take Hargon to see Hephaestus, who is the center of the conflict between him and Olympus. Hephaestus is shown in his workshop forging a new weapon for Yuan. He hopes that it would be the last weapon he makes, and he also wonders when Yuan would come back to the workshop. Speak of the devil, Yuan suddenly makes an appearance and Hephaestus is shocked to see him. What's more, he brought a friend. Hargon introduces himself to Hephaestus, who notes that Hargon bears a striking resemblance to Zeus. When Hephaestus asks if Hargon has come to capture him, Hargon replies that he simply came to see him. Despite this, Hephaestus is wary of trusting any Olympian, especially one who is a direct descendant of Zeus. Hargon explains that he was raised to believe that Hephaestus was a sinner, but he decided to come and evaluate him personally after hearing Yuan's support for him. Hargon observes that Hephaestus is not forging a weapon and inquires as to when he stopped making weapons. Hephaestus responds that he stopped after Gigantomachia. Hephaestus recounts to Hargon and Yuan the events that took place during Gigantomachia. He explains that the giants had trusted Olympus and befriended them, only to be betrayed and ultimately killed by them using the weapons he had created. The war against the giants, which was led by Zeus, was called Gigantomachia. After seeing his friend's betrayal and death, Hephaestus stopped working on projects that would in any way benefit Olympus. Hephaestus suggests a theory that the only reason Olympus is interested in recruiting him is to repeat the events of Gigantomachia. He believes that some giants may still be alive, and Olympus wants to eliminate them using his weapons once again. This information surprises Hargon, and he decides to leave to clear his thoughts. Hephaestus tells Yuan that although he believes Hargon is a good person, he is still young and could potentially change sides, so he does not completely trust him. Later on, Hephaestus presents Yuan with a new weapon that he has created for him. It takes the form of a glove and is called a nai. Hephaestus acknowledges Yuan's strength but expresses skepticism about his ability to control the gloves. However, when Yuan puts on the gloves, he is instantly transported to a different dimension, where a monstrous being with a giant eye confronts him and demands to know his identity. Yuan introduces himself to the entity but is surprised when the entity recognizes that he is from a different timeline. The entity introduces itself as the Eye. but Yuan is unsure of what it means. Yuan remembers that the Kaini was once a helmet worn by Hades and wonders what the eye is. Suddenly, the eye mentions something about an egg hatching, but Yuan doesn't understand. Then an egg materializes out of nowhere and releases a dense amount of dark mana that becomes increasingly unbearable for Yuan. He tries to use his divine flames to nullify the effect, but they don't affect the egg. Despite this, the hatching rate of the egg begins to increase. Yuan tries to ask the eye about the eggs but gets no response, and it becomes silent. Suddenly, Hephaestus attempts to hit him with his hammer, and Yuan snaps out of his trance. Hephaestus admits he was worried because Yuan was suddenly surrounded by a menacing aura. Later, Hephaestus asks about the gloves, and Yuan replies that they are so lightweight he can hardly feel them. Yuan concludes that the Black Divine Stone is another name for Kaini's piece, and that 3 divine pieces exist. He realizes he needs to obtain at least one of the remaining 2 divine pieces, the Trident's piece specifically, if he wants to understand everything. Hargon enters and asks if Yuan is alright, as there was a disturbance. Hephaestus claims that he only hammered something, but Yuan admits he doesn't know what happened. Hargon informs Yuan about a rumor that a powerful figure called the Vice Lord of the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult will participate in the Mudim Grand competition and asks if Yuan is excited to face him. To Hargon's surprise, Yuan reveals that he is the Vice Lord of the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult. Soon after Hargon learns that Yuan is the Vice Lord, he realizes how fun the Grand Martial Arts Tournament will be. The tournament begins and notable players grace the occasion and even the audience, waiting to see the winner of this competition. It begins with the preliminaries. The first bout is a last man standing kind. 10 players get on the stage and battle till there's just one left on it. Players like a kid who just cleared the 10th floor from the Somun noble clan. There are also players like Yang Wanir, who has a grudge against Yuan and immediately causes drama. The preliminaries start and Yang Wanir charges at Yuan, an action he will regret. Without even flinching, he takes Wanir out and doesn't even remember their encounter when he first got to Mudim. Solmun notices Yuan by appearance. Provoked but scared of Yuan, they don't attack, but Yuan then goes after them like a knife through butter. So fast and using the flat of his blade, not even attacking them properly. Yuan broke a few ribs but didn't kill anyone, showing he went easy on the lot. Yuan proceeds to the main stage. Hargon slowly moves to the main stage, showing how strong he has gotten, and Yuan takes note of the rapid improvement. After deciding that Hargon would be worth taking with him, Yuan gets confronted by Wanir. Out of the blue, with an unnatural presence, Moon Sobek, the head of the school and ranker, shows up and apologizes to Yuan for the rudeness. Moon Sobek proceeds to propose that Yuan continues his martial school. As usual, Yuan refuses the proposal, but the head proceeds to explain that the school isn't a guild in most sense, but a martial school with a long history in Mudim. Yuan cuts him short with a farewell, but Moon Sobek isn't having that as he stops him, enforcing that it wasn't an offer. Instead of fighting, Yuan asks if he wasn't scared of the Namyeon clan, the organizers of the event, that he would mess with the participant. Moon Sobek has his backing, the head of the Juga clan who turns out to be his blood brother and the reason for being so bold. Yuan firmly refuses the recruitment again, affirming that he only trusts himself, not the Namyeon clan. Suddenly, the Fist Lord of the Heavenly Demonic Cult, Pung Baek Lim, shows up looking for Yuan and referring to him as Vice Lord. This shocked Moon Sobek even more when he realized the cult Yuan belonged to. Pung Baek Lim asks for Yuan's permission to kill them. Moon Sobek, realizing his tight spot, apologizes and shamefully bids farewell. Yuan asks Baek Lim to look into the head of the Juga clan and as support for Moon Sobek. Yuan then proceeds to see the Lord of the Heavenly Demon Cult and he tests Yuan. Confirming that Yuan was far too skilled for this tournament, Yuan explains that he's participating for the Great Scarlet Medicine Ball. Next, the Lord tells Yuan of his plans for the cult, and Yuan, who doesn't want to be tied down, asks if it's okay for him to abandon his role as Vice Lord and make an enemy of Olympus. The Lord agrees, explaining that Yuan is a part of the cult, which meant he would be backed easily. Meanwhile, Moon Sobek informs the rest of his school of Yuan's status, bewildering everyone that heard. Moon further added that his greeting was met with brutal kill intent from the cult, instigating talks pointing out that the cult is a threat to the political power of the Martial Alliance. Moon Sobek continued by suggesting the tournament main stage be changed from a player versus player to a battle royale, with the intent of having Yuan defeated as he painted the picture, showing how bad it would be if the Vice Lord of this brute cult wins the tournament. Meanwhile, Yuan and Hargon discuss as they get ready for the main stage. At the beginning of the main stage, all eyes are on the duo, the center of attention. Soon, Yuan gets reunited with Nam Young-hun, a noble clan player he met on the 11th floor, who had stood up for them while Sobek and the others were plotting. Though Hun isn't worried for Yuan, given his skills. Hun gives him a heads up. The head of the Juga clan, members of the table, and Sobek applaud themselves for changing the format of the tournament to suit themselves as everyone now looked to Yuan with kill intent. Soon, the Lord of the Demon Cult, invited by the Namyeong, walks in, introducing himself after they realize Yuan hasn't been defeated and wouldn't easily be. The man then apologizes for his late introduction, introducing himself as Chun Mu-jin, the lord of the heavenly demon divine cult, stating that he came due to the Namgung family invitation. While some are questioning why he would be here, one of them welcomes him, stating that he had been waiting for him. Some of the other elders in the room attempt to unsheath their swords, but Mu-jin warns them, telling them that he'd kill them if they did. Heeding his advice, he commends them, saying they've done well to listen. Chun Mu-jin then tells them that he heard that the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult's Vice Lord would have won the Murim competition if the previous rules were in place. He believes such a claim to be absurd, even questioning if this was even possible for a mere demonic cult to participate in the competition. He then pauses as he notices the uneasy expressions from everyone in the room. He then asks them what is wrong, asking if he looks angry, and if so, why would they think he'd be angry, telling them that in the end, it's a stage that has been set through all their efforts, though he claims it will soon be destroyed. Later, Kim Yu-won is seen fighting against another candidate, narrowly missing. Seeing that his opponent is using a skill known as Sword Chi, he deduces that he's very skilled and he may have to start fighting seriously. The two then clash furiously, dealing blow after blow. He then wonders if it's just his imagination or if he's the only one that's going after him. He then thinks to himself that it shouldn't be too unfair if that was the case, considering that the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult has been a long-time enemy of the Murim League. Watching the ensuing battles, Jae-gar wonders if that is the reason the rules were changed, stating that while he has no idea who did it, it has proven to be simple and effective. Yuan then creates a magic sword, and despite its effectiveness being reduced, Jae-gar states that although his skills don't come close to that of a ranker's, his magic power stat to create a sword chi of that size must be at least 60. He further adds that while he lives up to his name somewhat, he overestimated him. He then claims he has finished his calculations and then orders some fighters to charge toward Hargon, but they end up being blasted away by a powerful lightning attack. Hargon then questions if the fight isn't a bit too unfair for the others. Jae-gar then asks him if he's standing with Kim Yu-won, to which Hargon retorts with a question, asking him so what if he is. Jae-gar then expresses his thoughts of their family having a good relationship, to which Hargon mocks him, asking him where he got that idea and claiming that the Jae-gar clan had always talked big. When Jae-gar calls his words vulgar, Hargon retorts saying it's only natural that he does, because he's saying vulgar things as well. With that, he releases a lightning attack. After a brief scuffle, Jae-gar decides that Hargon is a tough opponent and commands the others to subdue Yuan. Both then continue to fight each other, and Hargon quickly gains the upper hand. Jae-gar then complains that they would have easily gotten rid of Kim Yu-won. Hargon disagrees, telling him that they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Finally, he defeats Jae-gar, and on Yuan's side, the other fighters are so scared of him that they forfeit, leaving him and Hargon alone in the arena. Before the fight, to Hargon's dismay, Yuan asks him two questions. First, he asks him if he regrets his actions getting on the bad side of Olympus, to which he replies negatively, although he is aware of the consequences. Yuan then asks him if he has already forgotten the time he flung him away with one punch. Seeing this as a taunt, he then replies that he could never forget, but retorts, asking him if he still seems the same as then, to which Yuan replies that he looks smaller. With that, they clash and their long-awaited battle begins. They deliver blow after blow to each other, the forfeited fighters wondering if the two were actually players or rankers. As the fight goes on, Hargon asks Yuan to use more of his power. They continue to fight, dealing powerful blow after powerful blow, their battle shaking the arena. Jae-gar, stunned by the sight of it all, quietly forfeits, adding that Hargon is much stronger than he expected, and that multiple players on his level couldn't beat him. He also adds that it seems that even Yuan is having a hard time. Meanwhile, the two continue to fight, completely unaware and apathetic of anyone or anything else around them. Pausing for a moment, Hargon playfully warns him that his sword is close to breaking and taunts him for only fighting defensively. Suddenly, a deep cut appears on his arm. Yuan smiles, telling him he hasn't simply been standing still and taking hits. Noticing that he is still unscathed after so many lightning attacks, Hargon admires him, admitting to himself that it's apparent that his physical abilities are below his, but still believes that his arcane power is greater. They then continue, Hargon dealing blow after blow to Yuan's sword with the intent to break it. Finally, he breaks it, yet Yuan coolly tells him that it was impressive. He then creates a blast of mana which repels all of Hargon's electricity and punches him so hard he flies away and hits the ground, ending the fight. Although there was one more fighter and Yuan was ready to battle him, the fighter faints, foaming at the mouth. With no other challengers, Yuan is declared the winner of the tournament. He then worries that his sword broke sooner than expected, saying that he finds it hard to trick rankers by simply acting. So with the sword suppressing his arcane powers, it should seem like he had the same skills as Hargon, though he's worried his final blow would give him away. He's then rewarded with the prize, the Great Scarlet Medicine Ball. He then thinks to himself about the 20th floor and that while he needs to prepare a lot for the things he has to do, he must first reach his target stats. While the elders are watching the outcome of the tournament, Zhuge Jin angrily wonders to himself why Hargon would side with Yuan, especially since he is the son of Zeus, Yuan's enemy. Meanwhile, the others begin cheering, saying that Yuan's victory is fortunate for the martial realm since he was the favorite. The elder finds this laughable, considering how they were saying rude things about the heavenly demon cult not too long ago. He then angrily questions Jinwoo about what he's planning by roping in this evil cult. Jinwoo then corrects him, saying that while they are the heavenly demon cult, they are not evil and that all he did was offer an official alliance. When Jin questions him about the alliance, he reprimands him, telling him that it is much better than bringing in Olympus, adding that the matters of the martial realms should be settled by those of the martial realm, adding that he should be ashamed of himself. Jin then realizes that Jinwoo understands the situation they're in, but only remains silent because his faction was in the majority. But now that the heavenly demon was on his side, he has taken control of both power and just cause. Chunwoo-jin then says he'll leave after they tell him who Moon So-baek is. One of the elders, fear written across his face, then thinks to himself that he's fucked. Some days later, Yuan is in the Namgung noble clan training chamber. Looking around, he believes he had gotten lucky, as the chamber wasn't a place one could simply borrow for a few days. He then remembers the first time he entered the tower. He remembers wanting to be a ranker for the Namgung clan because of how big it was, but now it seems smaller. He then looks at his arcane power, stating that while he only needs one more point to make it to 100, it won't be easy, so he plans to use the Great Scarlet Medicine Ball to reach it. He remembers what they said about it in his past life, that it requires to focus the most, but he believes that the largest hurdle will be how much mana he contains. He then swallows it and suddenly, a large amount of mana, highly pure and high in energy, flows through him. However, while it seems to somewhat obey him because of the Master of Mana skill, he fears that it might not be enough and he might fail to increase his stats. Meanwhile, on the 20th floor in the Marine Kingdom of Portugia, some adventurers are tormenting some giant children, mocking them for crying despite their size. The adventurers then tell them that they shouldn't have sided with the demons, and that they should have acted better when Asgard was trying to help them. They then tell the children to give them the location of the legendary Stone of the Sea, a stone that grants its finder the title of God of the Sea. The children say they know nothing about it, claiming that it's just a rumor. The leader of the group, Horang, then tells them that they heard from Olympus that the stone was hidden by some giants, and that if they weren't going to comply, he would kill them, saying that Olympus wouldn't care if 1 or 2 giants died. Suddenly, Yuan appears out of nowhere, his arcane power at 100, and with a new skill called Cinder Eyes, which increases his senses, and an innate skill called Sensory Field, which allows him to gather information on all objects and life forms within a 50-meter radius. The group recognizes him as the one who won the martial arts tournament. Yuan then swiftly approaches them to defend the giants. Yuan then confronts the group. While they are holding their ground, they can't help but notice how strong he is. The leader, Horang, then asks him if he's Kim Yuan, saying that he has seen his face a lot. He then tells the group to retreat, worrying they may be ambushed by soldiers of the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult, but not before mocking the Titans, telling them they don't know how lucky they are. Later, the Titans, whose names are Var and Noir, thank Yuan for saving them. Yuan then asks them why they didn't fight, stating that they should be capable of fighting them even at such a young age. Var then begins to ask Yuan about his allegiance, seeing that he knows about the Titans well. Noir then begins to argue with him, telling him that he saved them. Noir argues back, telling her that humans can't be trusted and that he probably expects something in return. When Yuan confirms his suspicions, he begins to tell him again that they don't know where the Sea Stone is. Yuan then clears the air, saying that he doesn't need the Sea Stone but has business with the Titan Urfa, their elder. Urfa then tells him to leave, saying that Urfa does not grant an audience to humans and threatened to kill him if he didn't leave. Of course, this is true considering that all giants are born with great power and they only restrain themselves due to the bad relationship between humans and giants. Var then tells Noir that they're leaving, but Noir had already contacted the elder, feeling that since Yuan did save them, they deserve to return the favor, though she adds that it's not up to them if the elder wants to see him or not. Later, Yuan along with the giant siblings is riding on giant wolves, with Var wondering aloud why the elder would want to see him. Meanwhile, Noir wonders how he was able to control the wolves without difficulty, suggesting that maybe he had the druid's taming skill or used an illusion skill. While Var has taken a liking to him, saying he was outstanding at the Mudim tournament, Noir is still wary of him, believing the elder is suspicious as well. Noir then tells him not to pick a fight with him, to which he agrees. Sometime later, the trio then reach their destination, the giant tree Adam. Var then admires it, claiming that it is a great tree that cannot be cut or burned down, though Yuan remembers it being burned down in the second Gigantomachia before his regression. Var then warns Yuan to move carefully, otherwise he could die. Later, they reach the village of the giants, where the locals anxiously wonder who Yuan is and why he's in the village. Noir tells him to ignore them since he's a guest of the elder. Soon they reach a large building atop a flight of stairs. Var calls out to the elder, and the elder calls out to them to come in. Yuan finally beholds the elder Urfa, known to be a high ranker that existed even before the Gigantomachia and a living legend among the giants. Urfa calmly tells Yuan that it's nice to meet him, Urfa asks Yuan his name, saying his memory has gotten vague from old age. After telling him, he then tells the young man that he's heard a lot about him and was mentioned a lot by Hephaestus. He then says that as someone who just touched the 20th floor and is far from being a ranker yet wants to fight Olympus, he is amazing. However, he called him reckless and advised him to not stand up against them, saying that he was as significant to them as a booger. Yuan then taunts him, saying that though he heard that he's a pacifist, in reality, he's simply scared. Urfa then tells him that he's just mindlessly saying things. Yuan then tells him that Olympus is preparing for the next Gigantomachia and asks him if he'll simply sit and wait for the fall of his race. Urfa then notices that the aura of mana he put out earlier is refusing to harm the child, and he notices that there isn't a single ounce of fear in his eyes. He commends Yuan, saying that he truly is as fearless as he had heard. He then admits that he's right and that it's only a matter of time before their ruin, stating that it could happen at any time. He then tells Yuan that he heard from Hephaestus that he's looking for the sea stones, telling him that though he may not have them, he knows their location. Yuan then asks him why he's telling him this. Urfa replies that he has two reasons. The first being that he's not on Olympus' side, based on Hephaestus' recommendations, and the second being that he's the strongest player of the era. Later outside the building, Yuan wonders if Urfa was looking at Kaini. He believes that his evaluation of him was far too generous, regardless of how great Hephaestus' guarantee was. He also wondered if Urfa was just testing him to see if he was worthy of the sea stones. Putting all that aside, he's satisfied that he'll know the location of the sea stone soon. Moving around Adam, he admired the tree, stating that it was just as large as the Great Sage's staff and that it would be hard for him to damage the tree at his current level. With this in mind, he decides he can run wild as much as he wants. He then creates large balls of divine flame, and combining the power of his cinder eyes and sensory field, he tries to dodge all of them. At first this goes well, but soon he begins to feel dizzy, with him wondering if this is due to him using too many high-ranked skills. Nevertheless, he continues to dodge them well with a few close calls. While he does believe that the combination of the two skills is wonderful, it could overload the brain and he still needs to practice. Just then, another giant named Quant finds him, calling him an ant bastard. Quant questions his strength, wondering if the rumors are true or if they're just made up. The other giant tries to calm him down, saying that he was called upon by Urfa and came to the village with Var, but he's hearing none of it, shouting that it doesn't matter and that all humans are enemies. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Urfa is having a nightmare where he's fighting the god of the sea. Urfa wakes up with a start, assuring his pet wolf that he's alright. He wonders how many times he's dreamt that dream, and wonders if it's so vivid because of Yuan. He then wonders about the fight between Olympus and Yuan. Outside, someone shouts, informing everyone about a fight with Yuan. Urfa then thinks to himself that things work out the way he wants them to this time around, referring not to him, but to the god of the sea, Poseidon.
Okay everyone, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Remember to leave a like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.